Africa (BIDA), which is slated for February 28th to March 2nd, 2022 in Nairobi. The was also a member of the NEPAD Heads of State and Government Orientation Committee, said the PIDA Week provides an opportunity for stakeholders to review and reflect on progress in the implementation of infrastructure programs across the continent. The head of state was speaking when he virtually attended a closed-door 39th session of New Partnership for Africa Development Heads of State and Government Orientation Committee meeting. Now, former Youth Principal Secretary Lilian Omolo has declared her interest to vie for the Embu County Senator's seat at the forthcoming general election. Omolo has, however, not disclosed the party ticket she intends to use to vie for the position. The former PS said she is currently consulting her supporters before making a final announcement on the same in a week's time. The former PS has been out of the public limelight since 2018 when she was implicated in a mega corruption case at the National Youth Service. Now, the United Democratic Alliance Party chairperson Johnson Muthama now says that it is only a matter of time before the One Kenya Alliance joins the Raila Odinga-led Azimio la Umoja political outfit. According to Muthama, Oka principals Kalonzo Musyoka, Gideon Moi, Martha Karua and Cyrus Jirongo are just stalling and will eventually pledge their allegiance to Odinga. This, he said, is despite the principals inking a coalition agreement which is expected to be tabled before the Register of Political Parties on February 28, 2022. President Uhuru Kenyatta has joined the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres in urging the government of Ethiopia to prioritize finding an amicable solution that will bring the ongoing conflict between Addis Ababa and the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front to an end. According to President Kenyatta, diplomacy will go a long way in alleviating the conflict that has affected a number of communities and displaced persons across the Abiy Ahmed-led nation. President Kenyatta also added that the dispute, if left unchecked, will tarnish the progress that Addis Ababa and the Horn of Africa region have made in recent years in matters development and security. Still on matters Ethiopia, an Embu court has acquitted 13 Ethiopian nationals who were arrested and prosecuted on September 19, 2021 for being in the country illegally. Appearing before Senior Principal Magistrate Henry Nyakwemba, the 13 aliens were acquitted of charges leveled against them. Magistrate Nyakwemba ruled that they were not guilty, citing that they had only fled from Ethiopia due to the ongoing civil war and were looking for asylum. Now, at least 60 people were killed in a militia attack at a displaced persons camp in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Kodeko militia was responsible for the killings, which took place at the Savu camp in Ituri province. Kodeko fighters have killed hundreds of civilians in Ituri in recent years and forced thousands to flee their homes, according to the United Nations. Recent attacks have also targeted displaced persons camps. And President Joe Biden is sending about 2,000 troops from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, to Poland and Germany this week and shifting roughly 1,000 Germany-based soldiers to Romania. Biden has said he will not put American troops in Ukraine to fight any Russian incursion, although the United States is supplying Ukraine with weapons to defend themselves. The military moves come amidst talks with Russia over its military build-up at Ukraine's border. And the US soldiers who refuse to get a COVID-19 vaccine will be immediately discharged, saying the move was critical to maintain combat readiness. The Army's order applies to regular Army soldiers, active duty Army reservists and cadets unless they have approved or pending exemptions. The discharge order is the latest from a US military branch removing unvaccinated service members amid the pandemic after the Pentagon made the vaccine mandatory for all service members in August 2021. This is back home. Newswire and the entire Standard Media Group continues to urge you to go get tested so that you know your status when it comes to COVID-19. Also continue observing the COVID-19 protocols, but most important, go get vaccinated against COVID-19 because taking care of yourself is taking care of those that you love, and so that together we may be able to win the fight against COVID-19. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis. Good morning.
The SpiceFM Newswire is brought to you by InDriver. Download the InDriver app from the App Store or Google Play Store to enjoy a safe, comfortable, and affordable ride around Nairobi.
This nation has never healed genuinely from the 2008 violence. We've never had a healing process. We've swept it under the rug.
Let me tell you, the handshake was the most disastrous political event in the history of country after the coup attempt of 1982.
There's no Kikuyu pothole, Luo lack of water,
Right.
Okamba, lack of traffic.
Yeah.
There is no Luya lack of drugs in the hospitals. Or Jaluo one. All our issues are the same issues.
If you are in a room and just about everybody in that room has a court case or another, what impression does that give you?
What are you saying? Why haven't you done it in the last 20 years? But they're telling us, like August, some miracle is going to happen. My friend, I want to tell Kenyans you'll be in for a room.
Spice FM, Malindi.
Thursday morning is looking pretty good in the city today. As usual suspects at this hour. Jogo Road is already starting to pile up this morning. And just in case you have not been on Mombasa Road yet and you're planning to do that, there's a diversion just after the junction going towards the southern bypass. So you will not be able to go straight this morning. They've closed that off and the necessary directions are being given. So you're going to have to take a little bit of a detour as you're getting into the city. We're likely to see some traffic on Mombasa Road today because of that. So just prepare in advance. And if you're stuck somewhere up the road, just know that that's what lies ahead. It shouldn't be too bad, but just in case, we'll let you know about other routes that you can use. The southern bypass looking pretty good for now with that. Other parts of the city yet to wake up. When they do, we'll be just here to let you know what it looks like. How about we talk on SpiceFM KE on Twitter? Text 40127 and keep things moving this Thursday.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room.
I feel like
The
I'm
only
already. Like it's already 6:09.
You feel like you're not ready for what?
So for this, it's already 6:09.
Imagine.
It was
On the
4
3rd of February.
just now.
It was 4 o'clock just now.
Aye, surely. Hello, welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation. How you doing? It's a 3rd day of February 2022. Happy Thursday, or as we call it, the first Friday of February. Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation. Ndu,
Yes.
habari yako?
Mzuri sana, habari yako.
Poa.
Nimefurahi kukuona. Yes.
Is
Unataka
he-
niendelee?
is it offloading his
I'm
truck?
telling you. Offloading cargo.
One pain, one's culture.
Indeed. Mambo
Yeah,
vipi?
When I'm in Den.
so it comes into the studio and it takes the first 5 minutes just getting things onto one book, second book, third book, one phone, second phone, third phone. Hey.
Yes. Tools of the trade.
Mambo vipi lakini?
Maridadi.
Kabisa?
Yes, in a previous generation, when it was really maridadi, we would say bam bam.
Hey. Yes.
And
Sorry.
Bam Bam here
I just had a moment.
is
clearly you're not here with us.
BAM.
BAM.
Yes, for those moment-inclined individuals, it is BAM.
No. That's not what I was thinking.
Of course not.
Totally not.
You went somewhere else.
I just remembered something else.
Hey, happy memories. Okay. It's a good way to start your morning.
Is it?
Yeah.
How are you though?
I'm very well.
Super.
Yes, kabisa. Niko kabisa, niko proper.
Uko proper.
Proper.
Hata Johnny ako proper.
Yeah? Properly. There's a song that's called Properly. Johnny knows that song.
He does.
Yeah.
Sababu nimemhail.
It's by Nyashinsky. Okay, welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation. Today we have several conversations. Now at 7 a.m. we have the regulator of journalists. The Media Council of Kenya Chief Executive Officer David Omoyo will be with us. And he is here to declare unequivocally that if there is any journalist working in any media house
in this whole republic,
in this Republic of Kenya, and said journalist is wishing to contest for an elective post in August, that journalist should leave the newsroom.
Okay.
Immediate. So he's coming to tell us why journalists seeking elective posts should leave the newsroom. And then at 8 o'clock, we have Justice Thursday's conversation. Today, we are not going to talk to somebody who is in the judiciary, but we're going to talk to somebody who has gone through the system in the judiciary. She'll be here with us to tell us about what you go through as a woman with a child when you're put into that system and then you go to prison. The plight of very many babies who are behind bars, not because they are criminals, but because their parents have been convicted and sentenced to serve a term in prison. What do they go through? She'll be here with us at what time?
8 o'clock.
It is at 8 o'clock. Her name is Teresa Njoroge, and Teresa is the founder of an organization called Clean Start Kenya. She'll tell us about it and about what they're doing. And then today is the 3rd, and in just 3 days' time, at the end of this week, the IEBC will conclude what they have been calling the Enhanced Continuous Voter Registration. Hey. Hiya. Time is coming. It's coming to a close. So,
6th February.
that enhanced program is coming to an end this Friday. What happens? Have they finished what they wanted to
Have they reached 4.5 million?
That's a question. And then what happens if they don't hit that target? What next? I've seen some people saying, we give them money to enlist 4.5 million voters. If I give you money to give me 10 bananas, you give me 4 bananas, what do I expect?
The change.
Bas.
Because you said that this is what you need in order to get me the 10 bananas.
Yes.
N'est-ce pas?
Yes.
Then you didn't bring the 10 bananas, but I gave you the money for the full 10 bananas.
And I did not say ile itabaki kula.
No. And I didn't say later, you can bring me the remaining 6 bananas. No.
And there is a solid reason why they can't extend this time, isn't there?
So.
Cost.
Yes. So are you saying the same energy that is required and the same resource that is required to enlist 2 people is the same amount of energy you will require to enlist 20?
Yes.
In which planet? In which solar system?
The voter register sits there. The registration clerk. That registration clerk can register 10 people, can register 20 people. But you pay them.
Man, if I was looking
They're
for
paid for the period, CT, almost on a daily.
If I am looking for something that I can use a benchmark for faulty logic, it's that one.
So if they're sitting at the booth, right, one person comes or 200 people come, you're going to pay them the wage for the day.
So
it's more expensive to keep them on for longer, obviously.
Is IB spending its own money?
But they went to government. They went.
They're spending our money.
Precisely.
Our money.
Now,
and they came to us.
Now, have we said
we don't have more
we don't have money?
We have money.
We don't have money, CT. They removed money from agriculture yesterday.
The money is coming from where exactly?
That money is we are
they
borrowing.
Removed from agriculture removed from
And we
other
are borrowing
places
more.
and borrowing more to make it happen.
You know, military is security. Remove some of it there and put it to voting, because that's also security. Where to happen?
Voting.
Kama watu wataki kuvote, so achana nao.
Unajua nini? You must try a little more so that you can say, you know,
We really
tried.
really
I mean,
tried.
you guys
We really
saw.
tried, and
We
it was
pushed
you
this
guys
thing,
who didn't want
and
to do
it's
the
you guys who
business.
decided that,
They're not doing
whatever
it
you
here.
The
decided.
thing is, after the 6th, the exercise does not close. It continues for a couple more days. Okay, and then it'll close.
A couple of years, how many?
They need to close that register. I think the register needs to be closed so that auditing begins, so that all those things happen. I'm not sure of the dates, but I think somewhere
But
around.
there is a date after which registration cannot continue
So
because they must close it.
here's the thing. Audit takes 30 days. Then verification of the register takes some time. And this is now in May. So around May, we have to close this register. So you have a couple more weeks to go now to the IEBC office, not to go to the clerks who are sitting somewhere on the streets. Anyway, we'll have those conversations at 9 o'clock, and we'll be joined by the chairperson of the Elections Observation Group, ELOG, Anne Ireri. She's also the executive director of FIDA Kenya. But let's look at COVID. Breeze through it.
Okay, breezing through, we are looking at 119 new cases from a sample size of 4,808 in Kenya. That gives a positivity rate of 2.5%. Again, numbers still low, so this is a good thing. We still are seeing that there is vaccination of school-going learners, and we've not seen just how far they've gone with this, but we just know from the Ministry of Health that it's ongoing. Let's look really...
Is it accounting for the increase in the number of the 15 to 18s?
Yes, it is. It's part of that. But they told us that they were going to give us numbers in terms of schools and where they've gone and vaccinated and how many per school kind of thing. Right. But I guess we'll wait to see. The Winter Olympics are happening in China, as we know. There's a COVID policy. And does it work? China has said they're going to do everything to make sure that the Winter Olympics are COVID-19 free Olympics, which start tomorrow. Some cases have been reported at the games, including amongst arriving athletes and officials. They're trying everything they can. What safety measures have been put in place? How successful has China's policy of zero COVID been? They've had to go through great lengths to keep the virus out. Foreign spectators are barred and tickets are not on sale to the general public. Groups of local spectators will be invited only to these events and will have to observe strict COVID prevention measures before, during, and after watching the games. So China's not playing here, and they're into the business of making sure COVID can be kept at bay as much as possible. It's also keeping the media, athletes, and observers in distinct bubbles, with the rules saying anyone entering these bubbles must be fully vaccinated or spend 21 days in quarantine. China is not joking with this at all. COVID testing is carried on a daily basis. Face masks are required at all times. Anyone testing positive is put into isolation real quick and only allowed to compete after getting 2 negative results within 24 hours. So they're not playing with this thing. Overseas participants will enter a bubble upon arrival in China and remain in it until they leave the country. So local support workers, including volunteers, cooks, and drivers, will also be part of a sealed bubble. There will be no physical contact with the outside world, even with their own families.
Bubble is what exactly?
Bubble. So what it is like the NBA did it at some point as well. So
Even
it
the
really
Olympics.
is literally a bubble, that you're in this enclosed space.
Like in the Olympic Village.
In the village.
You
but
don't
it's-
veer out.
It's sealed off, right? So everything that you need is in there. You cannot get out.
Bubble.
Bubble.
Remember what they did in Japan during the Olympics?
I recall. Bubble.
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 It actually it looks like a bubble from the outside. Like the bubble, the ones you blow, and then it floats in the air.
Yeah.
But now this one is
What
around.
color is it?
From
the outside.
Bubble.
Let's take a break. It's 20 after 6. We are live streaming the show on SpiceFM KE, Facebook and YouTube. Are you online? We are. Say hello.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Are you a woman looking to run for an elective position in the upcoming 2022 general elections? SpiceFM, the home of Kenya's biggest conversation, is inviting you to our studios where you can speak more about your vision and aspirations to an audience of millions of Kenyans as we celebrate women in leadership. For more information, contact us on 0763 969797.
We're looking at cloudy conditions in Nairobi. It'll be clear as the sun does come up. However, 25 will be the high and lows of 15 today. A little bit warmer in Nakuru today at 16, highs of 26 and lows of 14. 26 will also be the high in Nyeri, where it's mostly clear at 13. It's 13 and clear in Eldoret, highs of 25 and lows of 12. And it's clear in Mombasa at 25, highs of 31 and lows of 25. Partly cloudy conditions going into mostly clear in Malindi at 26, highs of 32. And in Kisumu, it's partly cloudy at 20, highs of 27 and lows of 19. Kakamega, partly cloudy at 16, highs of 28 and lows of 16. Out in Kampala, it's clear at 19, highs of 28 today. And it's raining in Dar es Salaam at 27, highs of 32 and lows of 26. In Johannesburg, it's cloudy at 21, highs of 28 and lows of 17. While in Lagos, still foggy this morning at 23, we'll see highs of 33. It's clear in Kinshasa at 24, highs of 29 and lows of 23. Bang on zero in Beijing into early afternoon, highs of 4 and lows of -7. 8 degrees and cloudy in Paris. Highs of 10 today. We'll see highs of 12 in London, where it's mostly cloudy, currently at 9. 5 degrees and cloudy. Dense fog warming in New York. 5 will be the high and lows of 4.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM,
This first
Nairobi.
Monday of February, there are very many people online.
I'm telling you.
Hey.
Where's everybody from? But we're happy to have you guys. June Ndu June is locked in from Juja. Good morning to you. Thursday morning, Vincent is locked in from County 047 and says, good morning, Bogie. Yeah, situation. What's Bogie?
Bogie?
Sounds like
Train.
Boogie.
Train. Carriage.
Okay.
Carriage. Bogie.
Crew.
Yeah. Oh, got it. Now, Edwin Washira has a message for you this morning, Eric. He's listening from University Way in Nairobi. It says, Eric Latiff, please stay put in journalism. The ground is shaky. Stay with SpiceFM KE. We need you there. Good day. Or the ground as he's seen it. He's been looking at the ground for the last 1 month.
I told you this guy works for the enemy.
And he said it is shaky. Tafadhali, do not do the thing. Well, tuned in from Mombasa, waiting to see you reading our tweets after every conversation. That's Joel Manyaga. Good morning to you. Dagi Oguta, tuned in. Already in Kisumu, Nakuru Lanet, Kitui Mulango, that's where Rose Mutia is. Olo Caleb is tuned in from Malawi. Bungoma is present. Davy Mwana Ireri, good morning. And Arenga wa Angorom, tuned in from Busia. People tuned in from Mombasa. We see you, Victor and Robert. Maina wa Nyeri, tuned in from Nyeri. Omwana Shadrach, tuned in from Nyamira County. Johnston, tuned in from Kericho. Jane Jesh, Rundo Marvelous, tuned in from Dubai this morning. So many of you online today. Slevian tuned in from Mlongo. Vitz Kirar, Edgar Odeke, Chris Babaki Chris. Seeing all of you this morning. Thanks for tuning in. Asante sana.
Good morning, everybody. City has the day's proverb.
Indeed, I do. Amechagua nazi, akapata dafu.
Amechagua nazi, akapata dafu.
Chose a coconut, but ended up finding dafu.
A duff.
One duff.
Amepata madafu moja. What is dafu in English, though?
It's being the C. Kernel is the word. Kernel.
Colonel.
That's dafu.
That's dafu.
Or there is this delightful, tasteful liquid that emanates from a coconut. Now remember, by the time it becomes what people see, that hardened shell, before it gets there, as it's still maturing, when it's still some green configuration, if you chop it off, that delightful liquid is in greater quantity. Now that is often referred to as madafu.
Okay.
And which one makes the wine?
Actually, the process of making that wine is actually...
So is there a difference between madafu and mnazi?
Mnazi now is a byproduct
Of
this.
It's fermented.
Yes.
But is it dafu that's fermented, or is it the coconut, right? Fully grown coconut? Because it also has it.
Yes, but the process, oddly enough, the process doesn't take place when you've cut down the fruit. No. The process is actually starts up the tree.
In the tree.
Yes.
Yes. That's where they collect whatever it is they're collecting. So it's not that you cut it down, you pour the juice, and then you ferment it. No.
Which brings me to the question. The liquid that you find in the dafu,
yes,
and the liquid that you find in the nazi, which of them makes the alcoholic one?
To be honest, I actually don't know. I'm not certain.
In Nigeria, so
now
now
I
when
see
you
like
cut
that's
the
where
fruit,
that's where this proverb is taking us.
in Nigeria, when
Chagua
you
nazi akapata dafu. Not the fruit, but the liquid. Alikuwa anatafuta pombe. Akapata juice.
Yes, in Nigeria.
In Nigeria.
Oh, right. So when you cut the fruit down, it doesn't have any alcoholic content. So now when the palm wine tapper goes up there, that means they know that it has ripened and it has fermented still in the tree. So he goes to tap it from the fruit, and that's how you now get palm wine.
Yes.
So when you bring it down and it has not matured, there's no alcoholic content. But they also know that they leave it there a little bit longer, then it has now turned into palm wine or gogoro. So now they go and tap,
it.
and then you bring it down.
Okay.
See?
Kabisa.
Wine tapper.
No, I did say I'm a wine tapper.
So much knowledge.
It's culture now. It's culture.
Yeah, right. Let's look at the headlines in the papers.
Hey, God.
Start.
Onye? Me?
Yes.
Okay. Now, there's a bill, right? And this particular bill is seeking to return of voting system last used in 2007.
Okay.
Now, when 2007 is mentioned, everybody kind of gets their knickers in a twist. But let's look at it. A fresh clash looms in the National Assembly following the introduction of a bill that seeks to amend the Elections Act to bring back manual voter identification and transmission of poll results. Right? Now, just looking at the details of this story. The Elections Amendment Bill 2022 is pushing for alternative methods that the IEBC can deploy to relay results during the August 9th polls. It further seeks to allow for manual identification of voters at the polling station. Claims of dead voters casting their ballots have been at the heart of alleged election manipulation in the previous elections. The state-sponsored bill was tabled on the floor of the House yesterday by Majority Leader Amos Kimunya. Clause 21 seeks to amend Section 44A of the Act to provide for complementary mechanisms for voter identification and transmission of election results, according to the bill. Part of the implication of the provision is that returning officers managing the polls would have to physically deliver election results to the National Tallying Centre. It further implies that failure of electronic transmission cannot be a basis to challenge the outcome of the presidential election outcome. So remember, with the technology now, is that from polling center, it's done, it's transmitted electronically to the
National
center.
Tallying Center.
Exactly. Now what they're saying is, you know what? We need an alternate method, just in case things go wrong. We can actually have humans taking the results physically, manually, to the National Tallying Centre. So what that does is that removes any of this business about the technology failed, it has been manipulated, etc., etc. Electronic transmission of results was at the heart of the 2017 presidential petition, where opposition chief Raila Odinga successfully challenged the re-election of President Uhuru Kenyatta at the Supreme Court. The country was plunged into a crisis in 2007 after the delay of some of presidential results, which was attributed to manual transmission. Some election officials took too long to turn up at the National Tallying Centre, which, of course, you can understand if they're coming from across the country. It is as a result of these anomalies that a law was crafted to ensure results were electronically relayed to the National Tallying Centre to avoid this. The bill now further seeks to reduce the period within which political parties are required to submit a certified copy of the membership form from the current 4 months to 3 months. This clause is seen as an attempt to give political parties enough time to prepare their membership roll for purposes of the primaries. The recently enacted political parties law require that only registered members of a political party can participate in their nominations. Coalition political parties will also be required to submit a copy of its nomination rules issued by the Registrar of Political Parties within 14 days of its registration.
Okay. If you look at it just casually, it is seeking to solve some problem here and there. So, for example, that one of saying, the law says that results are declared at the tallying center.
Yes.
Okay. So, at the polling center, you voted in this particular classroom. Ballots do not leave that classroom. They are counted in that classroom. They are declared in that classroom, and then they are sent. Now they're saying, you see, because of all those things of Form 34A, Form 30 what, and they're disappearing, the people, the presiding officer at that classroom will take a photo of the result, send it to the National Tallying Centre, and then physically move with that to the constituency tallying centre, and the constituency returning officer, the other person was the presiding officer. The constituency returning officer now collates all those results from the constituency and sends them. Again, it's like sends them electronically to the National Tallying Centre. So you have two results. You have basically a verification process. What was sent from Tamu Primary School, classroom 6A, and then what is sent from the tallying center, Muhoroni Primary School, do they collect?
No. Do you know the logic?
And then there's also physical. So from there, they come physically. You have the three of them. Physically.
This is the new suggestion.
Yes, they come physically.
The thing about, let's start with the physically, since it's the one you mentioned last.
Yes.
Ballot boxes, unfortunately, found themselves in water bodies where water bodies were present in very many elections in this country. Ballot boxes also did what now human beings are doing in Kenya, disappeared. Because in those days, we would take them to be tallied in a particular place. The journey that took Kenyans to the point where we said, look, folks, you are announcing the results where the elections took place. Not complicated. So if there's an issue, you can recount immediately. Now, these are things they're saying. Take a picture. Go ahead and take the picture after you've announced. Nothing stops you from taking a picture. But those results must be announced precisely where
they are. That hasn't changed.
They're not saying that you remove
this, they count, the result is announced there.
Immediately.
But you see, the presidential result has to be tallied at the National Tallying Centre. So we know the result that was announced in Tamu Primary School, in Kimana Primary School, in whichever primary school, all of them arriving here indicate that this is the result of the presidential election. Now, the issue that we had in 2017 was the breakdown in the equipment that was transmitting results from specific polling centers to the national. So you have issues of, so was this result declared? Was it sent on time? So they're saying, send it, but also physically
bring it so you can compare.
You know.
So they will be using both of them to make
And
sure
the one
that you have the
one
same.
that is brought physically will also matter.
Yeah, it'll
know,
count.
All these changes when we are at the cusp of having an election.
Yeah.
No.
That's why my issue is. My issue is that we're having so many laws
So close
in
to an election.
2020.
They are
they
pushing
had
them.
5 years. They've had 5 years to discuss this, to take it through public participation, to take it through parliament. Why now? We just changed the political parties law. Now we're changing the elections law. All these things have been pending in parliament for so long.
Eric, do you know what has happened? Remember that story about NHIF? It is now out. Now I understand.
Yeah.
Now I fully understand.
Now you see it.
Oh, now I see it because the headline in the Business Daily is...
Wait, let's do the traffic.
Okay, traffic.
Yes.
Please.
24 minutes to 7, Kenya's biggest conversation. We are live streaming the show on SpiceFM KE, Facebook and YouTube, and we're also live on SpiceFM around the country. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten. It is based on ideals that cannot progress our country forward.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your
All right,
day.
it's building up. And just a word of caution. If you're getting onto Mombasa Road today, just at that junction going towards the southern bypass, there's a diversion, surprise, surprise. And you're going to have to move a few meters to the left. You'll be shown. The signs are there. And it's likely to cause some traffic this morning, which has already begun. So if you're up ahead, just know that diversion towards the southern bypass is there. So probably you're going to be sent towards the southern bypass getting into the city. So just a word of caution on that. Jogger Road piling up this morning, and we're also looking at some traffic on Langata Road, but not too crazy at this point in time. Some traffic on the Thika Superhighway, and that's where we'll see the most of it, at least for now. Limuru Road looks pretty good. A little bit of inching of traffic, interestingly enough, outbound, and some outbound traffic on Kiambu Road. I guess folks decided, you know what, too much going inbound. Let's just go outbound. Wherever it'll take us, there we shall land. Let's see what it looks like in about half an hour or so. Let's talk on SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text 40127 and keep Thursday moving.
Spice FM, Malindi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
What about NSSF?
Headline in the Business Daily is Uhuru backs teachers ouster on NHIF board. For the longest time,
NHIF.
Yes, has a board. The teachers' union, that was the headline. The teachers' union has always, for the longest time, has always had one of their own as part of the NHIF board.
Mm-hmm.
But as we now speak, okay, let me just read it so that it is easier to understand. The NHIF board structure, okay? The old structure was the chairperson would be Kotu representative, okay? New structure, new Kotu representative still intact, right there, okay? Old structure, there were 2 appointees by the cabinet secretary. New structure, 2 appointees by cabinet secretary intact.
Retained.
Federation of Kenya Employers, FKE representative, old structure, new structure, intact.
Retained.
Medical Association representative, old structure, new structure, maintained.
Right.
PS Treasury, maintained. PS Health, maintained. Teachers Union representative has been replaced by 2 Council of Governors representatives.
Right.
The teachers contribute 300,000 members to NHIF.
Right.
Let's pause it there. Farmers representative they say will be the CEO. NGO.
So we've been having a farmers representative at the board of NHIF.
NHIF.
Okay.
NGO council representative, old structure, new structure, 0.
Gone.
Director of medical services, old structure existed, new structure, gone. Now.
So the new board has how many members then?
The new board has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 slots. As for the numbers, you can multiply.
COG has 2.
Yes, COG has 2, cabinet has 2, like that.
Okay.
Yes. Now, net result of this configuration is now the government has firm control of NHIF.
Because the government has who and who and who?
Yes, start counting, my friend.
The government has PS Treasury, PS Health. The government has 2
cabinet appointees, cabinet secretary, 2 appointees by the cabinet secretary.
On top of the PSs?
Yes.
2 appointees, that's 4. Council of Governors, 2.
Yes.
That is 6.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, if you look at the back and forth that the government has had with NHIF, it has been with the board. So long as the NGO council and the teachers, they were the ones who, it is reported, made the most noise about issues that actually went on. Oh, this and the other, this and the other, this and the other. Of interest, you look at all these things, and then you look at this new law that we brought into being, where NHIF is now compulsory.
Yes.
You get to 18, you must have NHIF.
Yes.
Now, among the new functions that this board is going to have is to not only look at the monthly contributions of every Kenyan aged 18 above, but they'll also look at penalties for those who fail to comply. Yes, that's the new role. Okay. Now, all this is so that, according to them, there's a smooth process towards universal
health coverage.
Yes.
So Monanchi has been removed. Monanchi had
teachers,
farmer.
Yep.
Farmer gone.
NGO
gone. Teachers and Kotu, I don't understand why they were both there anyway.
No, Kotu is there. Teachers gone.
See, now teachers are represented by the trade.
They are represented, but...
and then the other person who's contributing to this, which is employers, who are contributing, matching the contribution of their employees, the employers are still there.
Employers are still there.
So what we need is basically a people's representative.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Here's one.
So this puts an abrupt end to the back and forth that the NGO Council have had with issues in NHIF, and of course now it's seen as issues with the government that are now gone. How do you remove a problem? You remove the people causing the problem.
Indeed.
Cut it at the base.
Kabisa. So that problem has ended. But they have said, said this one, they're not taking it lying down, they're going to court. Yes.
Where were they when all these changes were being proposed?
They're waiting to go to court.
Okay, let them go. There's a man who is crying with one eye. When Kenneth Bundi went to the upscale Volume VIP club in Mombasa in the company of 3 friends last Saturday, all he wanted was a night of fun and then to retire to his room. What started as a night of merrymaking ended in tears when the man's drink was spiked by a lady he had met at the club, who then swept his bank accounts clean. In the end, 596,000 shillings gone. An excellent atmosphere, the Nation reports, and Bundi had a blast at the club. All was well until he woke up drowsy the next day and realized his phone and ATM cards were missing. He says, I left the club with 2 girls.
Maverick.
We arrived at my room at 6 a.m. They dragged me and transferred cash from my phone to different unregistered numbers. They used Fuliza and took a KCB loan. I lost around 17,000. They left with my phone, my laptop, and other valuables, Bundi told the Nation. He is now relying on CCTV footage from Volume VIP Club to identify the girls with the help of the police. The DCI, however, claims Bundi lost close to 600,000. You know those social media guys of DCI? They're the ones who had even a sweeter story. In fact, let me read you just 3 lines of that sweet story. But
what I like about them is, my friend, the imagery that they use.
You get the story juicily, nicely. Where is that story? Here. Man loses close to 600K after sizzling night with Mombasa damsel. What began as a night of merrymaking with a happy ending in sight almost turned tragic for a patron after he was stupefied by a woman he had met at a high-end establishment in Mombasa County.
Right.
The man, who was in Mombasa for a business trip, had decided to unwind at the newly launched VIP Club Volume in Shanzu before he met the woman, who laced his drink with a stupefying substance and swept his bank accounts clean. After having several drinks alone, the man got attracted to one of Mombasa's beautiful babes, who had swaggered past his table in well-calculated strides. Without wasting time, the man, who was deeply smitten by her looks, beckoned her to join him, before another man laid his eyes on her. That marked the beginning of the man's woes after he lost 596,000 as netizens reel from January's severe downturn. He is yet to recover from the aftermath. The two, who chatted animatedly, enjoyed their drinks as the soothing Kaskazi coastal winds swept across the multi-million establishment until around 4 a.m. when the lady, only identified as Waboi, whispered to the man that it was about time. Hand to hand, they staggered out of the club and hailed a cab that dropped them at Seville Apartments, where the man had reserved a suite. According to the victim, they took a shower before they went back to the room, where he took a glass of juice that knocked him out a few minutes later. Passed out until he was woken up by the stewards knocking at his door. Tunataka kuwasha room. DCI Twitter guys.
I hope had he prepared for that room?
What?
I hope so, man.
Because these ladies were definitely they were definitely top-notch cleaners. I mean, did they even leave the guy bus fare?
At least something to go back wherever you came from.
It's just that most people who encounter this experience will not talk about it openly.
Of course not.
But I think it is we are looking at a growth industry.
No, it really is. I mean, we're looking at the stories that we're told, not just from the DCI, of these things that have happened since November, October last year. And people are losing hundreds of thousands of shillings and are being drugged. Clearly.
They left him in debt.
Imagine.
Now, what if that money was a cooperative loan?
Remember, they even fulized cash. So he has a loan.
Several.
But by the time they even know your PIN number and can access your account, I mean, what did they give this person?
Yeah.
It said they gave him Rohypnol.
Stupefying.
Yes.
He was just
Rohypnol will do it to you. Rohypnol, from where you even have hallucinations, and they can ask you your PIN,
and you will
say yes. They'll just ask you and you'll say,
"Where? Nikubaya itown.
Kwambia.
Nikubaya. Why?
Be careful.
Why? Haya. Another story?
Hope for mentally ill prisoners after landmark court ruling. There have been many landmark things this week, isn't it?
Yep.
Catherine Wambogo has been in jail for 7 years now. She was charged with murder but later found to have suffered from postpartum psychosis. Postpartum psychosis is a serious mental health illness that can affect someone soon after having a baby. Prison cells have been her home since April 20th, 2015, when she was charged with murder. Miss Wambogo has been awaiting the Power of Mercy team constituted by the president to free her. But now, Wambogo has renewed hope of being freed following a landmark judgment that has outlawed sections of the penal code that allow courts to order mentally ill persons to be held under the president's pleasure or until a time they are fit to stand trial. Wambogo was the only woman in a case filed by 18 prisoners seeking to have sections, several of them listed, of the Criminal Procedure Code declared unconstitutional. In his ruling, Justice Anthony Mrima found that holding a mentally ill person until they are fit to stand trial or jailing them under the president's pleasure is unfair and unconstitutional. The judgment could see thousands of mentally ill people held in prisons or at the Mathari Mental Hospital under the president's pleasure or awaiting to be mentally fit. I don't know how you wait to be mentally fit to stand trial freed. The judge said a finding that a person is guilty of an offence but insane is unconstitutional. He said that a declaration is hereby issued that all of these sections of the CPC or any other law providing for the detaining of any person with mental challenges who faces a criminal trial or has been tried and a special finding made that such a person was guilty but insane is held at the president's pleasure contravenes articles of the Constitution. And he says such provisions are hereby declared unconstitutional, null and void.
Wow.
Big one here.
Wow.
Yep.
Landmark rulings. To be nice to have a conversation with Justice Anthony Mrima.
Really. This is not just the first of his. There have been quite a number that he has had in the very
he's in that
recent
court
past.
now.
Yes, he is. So he also went on to say the persons who are detained in prison in Kenya, the persons who are detained in prison facilities in Kenya under the president's pleasure ought to be arraigned before the courts which committed them.
Okay.
Bring them out and let's sort out this thing. If the person is mentally ill, you cannot have them sitting in jail waiting to be then declared mentally fit or then being deemed guilty. So essentially, let them go or put them in a medical facility. Yeah, don't put them in jail. How many people are sitting behind bars today because of that? How many people are sitting in remand waiting to be declared mentally fit so that they can sit trial?
How many people have actually been forgotten?
Yes. This is a big one.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a good move.
I think so too.
Remember that story we were talking about, the bus rapid transport system for Nairobi? And the fact that they want to lock out diesel and petrol vehicles from being given the operating license for BRT. And they said that there was a quarter-page advert that had been taken out by the Ministry of Transport, Infrastructure, Housing, Urban Development and Public Works. And it had been signed initially by the CS himself, James Macharia. A similar ad is in the paper today, this time signed by the Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Transport, Engineer Dr. Joseph Joroge, CBS. Same content. And now that it's here, let me just take you through it.
Please.
It starts with a whole background. Kenya intends to proactively reduce greenhouse gas emissions by implementing the National Climate Change Action Plan. The action plan has prioritized several measures for the transport sector to mitigate climate change. Key among them include enhanced uptake of electric mobility, development of an organized and efficient public transport system that includes mass rapid transit system, BRT, commuter rail transport, increased use of non-motorized transport, blah, 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 blah. Then they also tell us that demographic experts are telling us that by 2050, Kenya's population will be 100 million, with Nairobi growing to 14 million residents in worst-case scenario. So for this reason, Nairobi and other major urban centers will require efficient, cleaner, greener, and low-emission transport systems. So we'll have to commence planning today for a comfortable future. Are we together? The rollout of e-mobility will be dictated by demand and availability of appropriate infrastructure. For example, in 2020, 2- and 3-wheelers were approximately 73% of all registered vehicles. This number is growing rapidly, and therefore the government is encouraging the adoption of electric motorcycles in the country. The government wants to see electric motorcycles because we have seen that tuk-tuks and boda-bodas
not helping
are the majority of motorized transport in 2020, 73%. So to support this electric mobility in Kenya, our government has initiated an array of policy options to regulate the impact of vehicle emissions in the country, including introducing an 8-year age limit on imported vehicles. The Finance Act increased excise duty on vehicles whose engine capacity is above 3,000 for petrol-powered. The purpose of the increment was to discourage high engine capacity vehicles from being imported. We are also having 100% electric powered vehicles from 20% to 10%. The government will support research and development in order to come up with possible solutions to enhance uptake of e-mobility. In addition, the government will work with other relevant stakeholders to achieve global vision on e-mobility. Basically, what the government is telling us this week is that they are moving towards having electric vehicles in Kenya. and they're coming up with policies to support this. Have electric vehicles. You've seen the new rule that has now said 8-year vehicles, blah, blah, blah.
Yes, yes.
And the big vehicles, you increase the excise duty so that you don't have those big motor vehicles in the country. That increase the number of big motor vehicles in the country. Because Kenyans are like, niko na pesa. Unataka ngapi? Now, they're saying we expect some more policies that will now also discourage the importation of old diesel and old.
Okay.
We go into e-mobility.
This would work wonderfully. I mean, if these even new cars were affordable to most people, people don't buy second-hand cars because that is their preferred choice. It's because it's what they can afford.
Exactly.
Yes. So if this issue of tax, because with us it's always tax.
Oh, tax.
It's always tax. If this taxation, this insane taxation that we have on vehicles was reduced, why would people not buy newer cars?
For example, I'm not entirely certain, but the government has encouraged the establishment of local assemblers for motor vehicles.
They have.
But is there a tax incentive for people to buy those vehicles? How many people are actually going to Thika to buy those Volkswagens?
They're nice cars.
They're very nice cars. But one of the things that you'll find about those cars is a lot of the things are manual. For a 3 million shilling new VW Golf.
And 3 million shillings, chief.
Manual gear. Watakuteremsha kio, it's manual,
I
winding down on the window.
Those manual things personally make me happy.
Yeah?
Oh, yes. I like them.
Okay.
But 3 million shillings is not small change.
Yes. For 3 million shillings, you'll actually, and this is about a 1600cc car.
Yes.
For 3 million shillings, you'll import
a decent gas guzzler.
Yes. Bigger.
Which does room for you properly.
Yeah. It can fit kids' bicycles. When you're taking them out.
You know, they...
It's okay.
Don't worry, Siti. Don't worry.
Kubali Aisha.
Yeah. Where I'm going, it's not because of just that alone. Remember what we were talking about with regards to IBC management of electoral processes being altered.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
There's a bit there. I don't know whether the nation mentioned it. But the bill also suggests that streaming should be scrapped.
Streaming?
Live. Election results.
That's okay.
Live broadcasting of the results.
Live streaming of election results to be scrapped. That is what the Star.
That's an interesting one.
Yes,
That's a very interesting
that's what
one.
the Star.
Are they going to be able to pull that one off?
Yes.
Is it live streaming by IEBC or live streaming by
media houses?
Candidates?
The amendment reverses the gains the country has made. This is Justice Chacha Mwita. Electoral reforms, including results transmitted in a particular form. Okay?
Okay.
The story here. Okay. The expected confrontation, they were saying there's a showdown looming between the parliamentary troops allied to Deputy President William Ruto and those of President Uhuru and blah, blah, blah. Okay? We know the two.
Coming to the top of the hour.
Yes.
So you tell us this thing.
I will tell you this
in a bit detail.
Yes,
great detail. Especially because we are joined by the CEO of the Media Council of Kenya.
Yero.
We will look, okay, how is the media going to be affected by these amendments to the law in terms of our access to information, access to anything that is election related, and also the media preparedness ahead of the election.
Super.
This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room on SpiceFM and online. Good morning to you. It's now 7 a.m.
Spice up your life.
The Spice FM Newswire is brought to you by InDriver. Choose your preferred driver, mode of transport, and negotiate your fare to your destination for a safe, comfortable, and affordable trip only with InDriver.
Leaders to attend the program for Infrastructure Development in Africa Week, slated for
The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
State and Government Orientation Committee said the People Week will provide an opportunity for stakeholders to review and reflect on the progress and implementation of infrastructure programs across the continent. The head of state was speaking when he virtually attended a closed-door 39th session of New Partnership for Africa's Developed Heads of State and Government Orientation Committee meeting. Now, former Youth Principal Secretary Lilian Omolo has declared her interest to vie for the Embu County Senator's seat at the forthcoming August general election. Omolo has, however, not disclosed the party ticket she intends to use to vie for the position. The former PS said she is currently consulting her supporters before making a final announcement on the same in a week's time. The former PS has been out of the public limelight since 2018 when she was implicated in a mega corruption case at the National Youth Service. Now, the United Democratic Alliance Party chairman Johnson Muthama now says that it is only a matter of time before the One Kenya Alliance joins the Raila Odinga-led Azimio la Umoja political outfit. According to Muthama, Okoh principals Kalonzo Musyoka, Gideon Moi, Martha Karua and Cyrus Jirongo are just stalling and will eventually pledge their allegiance to Odinga. This, he said, is despite the principals inking a coalition agreement Wednesday, which is expected to be tabled before the Registrar of Political Parties on February 28, 2022. Now, President Uhuru Kenyatta has joined UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres in urging the government of Ethiopia to prioritize finding an amicable solution that will bring the ongoing conflict between Addis Ababa and the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front to an end. According to President Kenyatta, diplomacy will go a long way in alleviating the conflict that has affected a number of communities and displaced persons across the Abiy Ahmed-led nation. President Kenyatta also added that the dispute, if left unchecked, will tarnish the progress that Addis Ababa and the Horn of Africa region have made in recent years in matters development and security. Meanwhile, an Embu court has acquitted 13 Ethiopian nationals who were arrested and prosecuted on September 19, 2021 for being in the country illegally. Appearing before Senior Principal Magistrate Henry Nyakwemba, the 13 aliens were acquitted of charges leveled against them. Magistrate Nyakwemba ruled that they were not guilty, citing that they had only fled from Ethiopia due to the ongoing civil war and were looking for asylum. And 6 terror suspects were arraigned in a Loitoktok court hours after their arrest. The suspects were arrested by the local Directorate of Criminal Investigation officers. Abdullahi Abdi Hamud, Abdinur Mahmoud Hassan, Abdirahman Abdullahi Jamali, Abdirahman Mohammed Abbas, Yusuf Hussein Mohammed, and Abdullahi Shukri were arrested at Mbirikan Roadblock, Loitoktok Sub-County. Meshak Moli, a driver of the matatu belonging to Super Coach Company, in which the 6 were on board, was also arrested. The suspect will remain in police custody for the next 10 days to allow DCI officers to conclude investigations. Now, at least 60 people were killed in a militia attack at a displaced persons camp in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Kodeko militia was responsible for the killings, which took place at the sub-camp in Ituri province. Kodeko fighters have killed hundreds of civilians in Ituri in recent years and forced thousands to flee their homes, according to the United Nations. Recent attacks have also targeted displaced persons camps. And President Joe Biden is sending about 2,000 troops from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, to Poland and Germany this week, and shifting roughly 1,000 Germany-based soldiers to Romania. Biden has said he will not put American troops in Ukraine to fight any Russian incursion, although the United States is supplying Ukraine with weapons to defend itself. The military moves come amid stalled talks with Russia over its military build-up at Ukraine's border. And US soldiers who refuse to get a COVID-19 vaccine will be immediately discharged, saying the move was critical to maintain combat readiness. The Army's order applies to regular Army soldiers, active duty Army reservists, and cadets unless they have approved or pending exemptions. This means that the discharge order is the latest from a US military branch removing unvaccinated service members amid the pandemic. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
The SpiceFM Newswire is brought to you by InDriver. Download the InDriver app from the App Store or Google Play Store to enjoy a safe, comfortable, and affordable ride around Nairobi.
SpiceFM, Nakuru.
1 minute. All right, traffic on Mombasa Road this morning. We're looking at in and outbound, quite some, especially around the Maradaima. We're also looking at it building up on Langata Road in bits. Not quite sure what's happening. Just at the Wilson Airport, you're fine, and then you get to the roundabouts, and that all slows down considerably. We're looking at traffic also on Raila Odinga Way, Uhuru Highway, then through into the city and out towards Westlands. That's quite something. Jogo Road, right around the train station, really heavy traffic, bumper to bumper. Also on the Thika Superhighway, quite hot and heavy. A lot of action there with traffic. There are many diversions on Mombasa Road, so just in case you're diverted or you're stuck in traffic up ahead, just know that there's diversions towards the southern bypass. The western part of the city not looking too bad this morning. Coming out of Westlands, you will find a little bit of a hiccup here and there along Waiaki Way. If it's too much for you, use the Red Hill Link Road. The bypass is looking pretty good for us this morning. Let's use them. And then, should it get a little bit stickier, let's talk. Others sharing opinions about what you can use or don't use. SpiceFM KE on Twitter, text 40127.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down.
It's
This
7 after
is
7
the
on
Situation
the 3rd
Room.
of February
The
2022. It's Thursday. It's the first Friday of February. Welcome to the second hour of Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. We have a guest in the studio, like we'd introduced and teased the conversation, David Omoyo, the CEO of the Media Council of Kenya. Before we introduce him, let's hear the day's proverb.
Amechagua nazi, akapata dafu. Whenever people travel to the coast, people always talk about drinking madafu. Okay, byproduct of the coconut. Now, anyone who's consumed that particular beverage will know that it only makes sense before the coconut matures. In its infancy is where you get a lot of that very tasty juice. Now, very simply, the proverb is saying that one who chooses coconut, choose a coconut, but also gets the dafu. Yes.
Amechagua nazi, akapata dafu.
Yes. Let me give another correlation. In an African setting, when people say you've gotten a wife, what they're also not telling you, you get a wife, you also get the whole community and her relatives, or his relatives. Those also come with a spouse.
I thought you were going to say something else, but all right. We'll go with that.
Amechagua mke, akapata jiko.
Akapata what?
Jiko.
Meaning?
I'm not going to venture to interpret that. No.
It's a good thing you're across the table.
David Omoyo, good morning.
Morning.
Good to have you in the Situation Room again.
Good to be here too. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a while since you've been here. Lakini karibu to the hot seat.
Asante.
In the new year.
Don't make it too hot because it's already hot out there. It's right out there. It should be a little cooler in there. Okay.
So we want to have a conversation about the media and preparations for the forthcoming. I know that the Media Council of Kenya has already released guidelines for election coverage. They have also, in addition to what we've been having as the code of ethics for practice of journalism in the country. Recently, as recent as last week, you penned an article that was published in the Standard, which was saying that journalists who are eyeing political seats in this election should bid goodbye to the newsrooms. And just for me, just to quote a part of what you had written, He said, it's unethical for a journalist aspiring for an elective position to sit in a studio discussing politics and elections that they will participate in as candidates. It is ethically wrong and a breach of the code of conduct for the practice of journalism in Kenya to use media space to campaign unfairly. In the same vein, there has been widespread outcry from elected leaders and their supporters over personalized attacks against them by talk show hosts, eyeing elected positions for their political mileage. Some aspirants use their media platforms to deny their competitors space to engage in debates meant to enable voters make issue-based assessment of the candidates. And then before this, you had just written and said, the same way that the law says that civil servants who seek to vie for elective positions must resign 6 months before an election, it's the same that's expected of media, but there's no law.
Yes. When we discuss ethics and morals, is about personal convictions and what you want society to perceive you. Media operates from a position of trust that we have no license, we have not been elected by the people, but they trust us. That's why people go and elect a president and ask the media to question the president on their behalf. Mm-hmm. People go and elect MPs and all that and say the media will hold this person to account on our behalf because you have a moral high space to question this. And it is exciting. I'm part and actually encourage journalists and people working in the media to go to politics. Tongue in cheek, I will say that for a long time we had a lot of the media house was the home for many comedians and all that. I'm happy that the National Assembly is the next destination. We are glad that they go that way anyway, because this is where everybody, every MC and all that came in. Now they seem to be moving some direction. We're glad to donate them that way. Then we'll get a set of new ones. And actually, we had a management meeting yesterday, and we agreed that we are going to host a forum, perhaps a good cocktail for people in the media getting into politics, and we want to invite all the people in the media and went into politics to come and get and share. So we encourage it. We love it that people are moving. Okay. But we think it is not fair. And we have complaints. Yesterday, I sent a showcase letter to a media house owner in the coast. When I am planning to vie, I sit behind the mic, and every morning I abuse my opponents, say these are useless, that is a joker, and all that. The person applies to come to the show, I don't allow them, and all that. You know, you consistently, it's not fair. For objectivity and balance, it's part of the values of journalism. It's getting lost. So really, it isn't about, we encourage it. We are excited about it, and we're actually going to do our best to support them. We just think that it's unfair. So, you know, public servants, why are they told to resign? To avoid using the resources at their disposal to campaign or to unduly influence the outcome of an election they will be part of. And we think now that as a media professional, you can use the resources the public trust before you to unduly influence the outcome of an election, which you will become part of by blocking your opponents, campaigning against them, throwing, especially, vernacular things. You can do certain jabs at them and all that. And then suddenly, a few weeks, you say, okay, now I'm vying. And then that's really the whole idea.
So essentially, it's a fairly advanced conflict of interest, isn't it?
Yes.
So it's almost similar to allowing public servants to do business with the same government that they're supposed to be serving.
Yes, principally, yes. And you know that in law, very initially, we have been looking at the Njonjo memoirs and tributes. Very initially, it was illegal. Then it was legalized. Then we discussed about making it illegal
again.
And now we know that it is illegal, but via proxy takes place and all that. But ideally, it's a conflict of interest matter.
But where do you draw the line, or the deadline for the aspiring journalists or media practitioner to leave office or to leave the platform? Because they could have used this platform for the last 3 years to basically campaign. And then on the 9th of February, I say, okay, now I want to take this opportunity, CT and Ndu, thank you very much, guys. We've had a nice time. Hopefully the next time I come here, you'll be putting me on the hot seat because I'm going to vie for seat XXX. But I've already been campaigning on this platform for a long time.
Yes, we have no capacity, either moral or technical, to draw the line, as in timelines. We rely on the law. There's this general thing called the law of the land, and what generally felt. So it was generally felt that, okay, you may have been doing this forever, but 6 months of the elections in public service, you can leave, because then it's getting noisy and messy and whatever. And so with that we don't need to set a new timeline. If the makers of the law felt that 6 months is a good time to leave and be out there, so whatever you say in 6 months, you can be able to rub it from the minds of the listeners and the viewers and the readers, and so that you get space to the others. Because again, it's about as the campaign period hits up, you just step aside. So we are not trying to abrogate ourselves the power to decide the line and all that. We are simply trying to look in law that if you said, because on the same basis of the public servants, that not to use your office to unduly influence, so that this timeline is equal and all that. Remember, we're discussing morals and ethics and public perception, not timelines and calculations and all that. So we did not want to set the line and all that. And we also appreciate that internally, most, if not all, media houses, of course we have certain kiosks that pretend to media houses, have this moral perception. If you want to go to Vai, there is this and that perception. So really we are asking, it's like we are borrowing from the mother law, and bringing down and saying, guys, do you want us to talk about this, or do you want to just block your ears and see nothing, hear nothing, and all that?
Right. David, as the council, do you ever envision a space whereby these two things could exist symbiotically? Is it possible that one could sit in this space as a journalist and then also be somebody who wants to vie for political office, but then is able to carve out that position whereby they don't engage in these things that you are saying are unethical? Is it ever possible, or is it too grey that you say, you know what, let's just separate it completely? Do you ever see that it would be possible to exist?
Truth of the matter is that apart from personally reflecting about this matter, I've also had a bit of exchanges and all that. And we last week we had a chat with my staff about how lawyers have flooded Parliament in lawmaking. And so they remain lawyers and all that. So even the DPP applying that. How doctors do a bit of stuff around that. And well, I've seen, we attend a lot of ISPAC conferences, and it's very exciting when they invite Amos Kimunya, CPA, Amos to come and open and all that. I think it will be exciting if we get journalists and media people in Parliament, because one of the things we do is that many times I've tried to argue with MPs and all that, and it's a lot of back and forth. They really don't understand what we do and all that. So, number one, we encourage. We do not say that if you go to politics, you have to go down. You
abandon the profession.
Because from time to time, we think that even when the House debates serious matters, an expert here and there, can give a word and all that. We are well aware of the deep conflict of interest matter, because politics is about perception and misuse of platforms and all that. But we think that the highest decision-making organs in the country should be able to have a little expert advice from the media and all that. So we really appreciate it, but we are deeply aware that it's a very thin line before that goes, or before we are accused of misusing that, especially noting that then politics uses media and all that. So we are not against our people joining media and all that. It's about that balance. And we really think that many times laws are passed and matters the media are discussed by people who have no idea what media is. So we think that when we have a voice or two that can give that is good, as long as we can really do that. So we are really not coming in to say, no, just kaka kwa newsroom usonge and all that. We really encourage that people should grow. And I mean,
like you've said, ethically and perception-wise, how do you see this playing out? We see lawyers who are elected to Parliament and they still continue practicing as lawyers. In fact, they appear for their clients in court. Now, look at that scenario. Mohamed Jichopevu, MP for Nyeri, is still a practicing journalist who works at KTN with doing Jichopevu stories. Would there be an issue there, do you think?
Absolutely. I mean,
what would the issue be?
I have, and with an already advanced apology to him, we felt that we never knew that Moha was going to vie for the seat, but he did a few Jichopevu articles around the Nyeri MP, and then suddenly went to vie. It's one of the case studies we're discussing. There's the exposés around his perceived opponent that were run by this media house, and then he left to go and vie.
Or the big stories, for example, about the battery processing factory and all.
Yes, I mean, there are those things we think that, okay, yes. So then we ask, was this just investigative journalism ama alikuwa anatengeneza barabara hivi kwanza anapaka mtu matope ndio kuja sema hii jamani mchafu simuliona hata kwa TV yet it was the one. So I mean that's why we spoke about its perception. So we are well aware about that, but these are not concurrent really. We do not want, unlike medicine and law, I would get to law, unlike medicine where you come and then you dress and then you are dealing with your patients. Media and law are different. Media in the sense that you may not do a news article against your opponent or against government. If you're opposition, then you are misusing your platform and all that. Law in the sense that you are a senator and the governor is in court for corruption, as we have seen before. And you are heading the team of lawyers defending the governor, and you're supposed to pass laws and all that. You know, there are those conflicts. There are conflicts of interest now. Those are matters, not just ethics, but real perceived and real conflicts of interest. I think media, as I said earlier, we appreciate when we have journalists in that space because there are many discussions about media in Parliament, press freedoms, professionalism, resource allocation to media field and all that. We think so. But we do not think that they cannot run concurrently. Now, what we need is a person who has been in this field now going to that field. Yes, but not concurrent.
I mean, if what you say, academically speaking, is sound, practically it's a bit tricky because that so-called level playing field in my mind is impossible. If a businessman becomes a member of parliament, do they stop doing business?
No, they don't.
Question.
Yes.
If a teacher becomes a member of parliament, becomes a member of the Teacher Service Commission, they stop teaching.
You do. Because it's time that's against you. Not your willingness to, even if, say, one is a doctor. It's not that you don't want to ply your trade. It's time. How do you allocate your time? But a businessman, your time is not interfered with at all.
And I would say that, it's about direct correlation. A journalist cannot go, for example, to Parliament and discuss the bills. You've seen the newspaper headlines, isn't it? And come here and prosecute the same agenda again. It's just the way, like the House prohibits, by the House I mean Parliament, prohibits members from going out there and discussing matters before the House in other space, isn't it? So it's absolute conflict of interest if you are going to be a member belonging to a committee or just the whole house, go out or sit before radio mic or TV and castigate Parliament and do this and go to the house and say, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to, isn't it? So it's simply that really real conflict of interest. But when we are discussing maybe a media law or funding for the media as we do, or certain spaces like we talk about streaming elections, then you can say, look here, I'm an experienced journalist, I work in the media, or I own a media house. These are the issues we go through. So it's about really...
Yeah, but David, you can use that. I can go to Baragoi and tell the story of the conflict that's happening there, or Kerio Valley. Story from the people's perspective. This is what's happening in Kerio Valley. These are the people who are suffering. These are the kind of banditry attacks that they go through. And we're telling the story. It appears in the paper. It appears on TV. It appears online. I go to Parliament and the matter is brought, or I can even go and raise a question. There'll be no conflict there, would there? Because I'm not necessarily debating what is before Parliament.
You can go to Baragoi and you'll be interviewed by the journalists there. We will appreciate, or you can do an opinion piece. All right? So that then the journalists there will interview you as the local leader and the opposition guy and administration and all that, isn't it? Because if you, the politician, goes to Baragoi, are you going to interview people? No. You're going to speak. So you can do an opinion piece, but you can't do the balanced, objective story. That's the difference. Really.
The point you're making, you see, I'm thinking and I'm looking at it this way. You're looking at specific disciplines, and the thing that seems to be the sticking point here is the capacity that by virtue of that particular trade, you are able to peddle influence. Because you can't run away from being known by the public if you're in media. You can't run away. Like, we talk every morning for 4 hours.
It's a gift.
So somewhere along the line, somebody will get to hear of you. Now, one could argue that it already places on you an unfair advantage over somebody else who might be seeking, because when people campaign, they're seeking exposure. You already have it. And you have it every single day. You have more exposure than anybody else. You have more exposure than the president. You have more exposure than the people who campaign, one side and the other, those two, whatever. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All I'm saying is, when you look at it, you actually can't universalize it and say this is going to be the rule. It's that every discipline then has to come in and say, look, for folks, for our discipline, given the import and given the weight that we know it carries, this is how we believe we are going to conduct ourselves.
Well, okay, I don't know whether those sides are 2 or 3. Anyway, point is, influence peddlers, or people who borrow influence, are allowed in society. And if you look around our political field, they were either former head teachers. If you grew up in the village like I did, the teacher was like a fairly powerful person.
Yep.
There were former pastors and preachers. You can look at the list of people trying to contest elections because they are all over the place. You know, they are either pastors, preachers, because they already peddled influence and all that. They are either senior business people. And really, you can go on and also that influence. So you are allowed. Because by virtue of, human beings are social, by virtue of sitting behind the mic like you do every day, people get to know you, people get to interrogate you, people get to, think about what you do and all that. So it's allowed. And that's why, remember we are saying about at what time do you leave, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's the same issue as what time do you stop preaching to campaign? At what time do you stop teaching in class to campaign, isn't it? Because naturally, it is not illegal to use a platform to go up, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we think that at some point, wakifika mkondo wa mwisho,
you exit.
All of us, you exit. So it's what you said is right, that you are known as a journalist. Well, teachers are also known, and preachers too, isn't it?
Right.
Actually, if you look at the leadership that we had immediately before independence and after independence, they were predominantly teachers.
Yes.
And the reason is because teachers were by far the most prominent and the most respected people in communities in that time.
Yes.
Teachers are respected, yes, but not as they were during that period in time. Other holders of other professions are given more weight than teachers.
Well, because in those days, people had no other role models. I was having a dinner chat with my friend who was living in the house two evenings ago about where we grew up, and we said, who would you have dreamed to be? Either a teacher or a policeman. There was no other thing you would want to be because there was nobody else to see, or you were somebody. So the teacher that time, apart from teachers and the local chief and the youth winger, who else do you aspire to be?
And actually, how come many policemen did not become politicians?
I
mean, I'm just thinking aloud. All I'm saying is...
Because policemen are handled in crowds. The policemen, they all put on a uniform, so they are not individual. Because a teacher, you can discuss a teacher as an individual in the evening. Mwalimu fulani kafanya hivi na hivi, isn't it? Can you discuss policeman? Wale kwa huyo mwenye alikuwa si mrefu sana kama, because it's a crowd of people. So a teacher can be isolated and profiled. A good speaker, influence and all that.
And they also lived in the community.
Yes.
Police were living in the police quarters.
Yes.
So they also did not get really to mingle with the people like teachers would.
Yes. A few times we have had to discuss a policeman or two in media, isn't it?
Yep.
It is the isolated OCS Kabarnet alipatia watu mask akawambia nani nyumbani, isn't it? The guy and all, because it's only when you're isolated then you get a chance to deal with people. But otherwise, ni lori mzima ya polisi imekuja, it's a crowd, it's a guy of guys wearing uniform, they look like zebras and they're carrying batons and all that. But a teacher is an individual who loves this, so they made this comment and all that. Like a preacher, we don't deal with preachers in crowds and all that. Teachers, we see teachers when they are wanasema solidarity together, but otherwise we deal with teacher in an isolated way. So because then a teacher has an opportunity to address people. When did the police address people?
Hardly do they do
Yes.
that.
So really it's about that. So going back to where we began, it's ethics really. It's not written, it's about reflect about what did these people think about timelines and all that, and why do they think about it? What can we borrow without reinventing the wheel that we don't influence where we sit too unduly?
So you basically have become like Caesar's wife, because we keep talking about ethics and morals all the time to the people. We must practice ethics, and we must be seen to be ethical as a profession.
Yes.
Okay, we'll take a break now. When we come back, I want to ask you about the media owners who have political interests and whether there is any regulation on that. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. Our guest this morning is David Omoyo. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the Media Council of Kenya. We are talking about media and preparation for this forthcoming general election. Let's take a look at the weather and traffic. We'll be back shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice FM.
It's getting hot in here.
Oh, everybody steals. It's better a thief who brings something small back. And I say to myself, there's no better thief. A thief is a thief, period.
All those bribes, how much they're getting per year, how much inconvenience they're causing, as much as you call it a small case, it's worth it to be convicted.
The truth is, we are a tribal nation. Because if we were not tribal, and I want to go back to this, you cannot continue walking around with a mug which is clean outside and it's rotten inside.
We have become a fuliza country. We have mortgaged our country because of debt.
You've got one chef working and the assistant chef wakati anatakana koroge unga nini hayuko.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
All right, we're looking at cloudy conditions. The sun will be out soon in Nairobi. 25 will be the high and lows of 15. Mostly sunny at 16 in Nakuru. Highs of 26 and lows of 14. 13 is the low recorded for Nyeri today. Sunny conditions going to highs of 25. And in Eldoret at 14 degrees, highs of 24 and lows of 12. Sunny conditions in Mombasa at 26, highs of 31 and lows of 25. While in Malindi, it's sunny at 27. It'll go to highs of 31. Kisumu, sunny at 20. Highs of 27 and lows of 19. While in Kakamega, 18 degrees and sunny, highs of 28 and lows of 16. It's sunny in Kampala at 20, highs of 28. Dar es Salaam still raining at 26, we'll see highs of 32 and lows of 26. It's sunny in Johannesburg at 20, highs of 29 and lows of 17. And Lagos still hazy over the city at 22. That'll be today's low, going to highs of 33. 29 will be the high in Kinshasa, where it's raining this morning at 24, and we'll see lows of 23.
Spice up your life.
Uhuru Highway, a lot of action this morning as you're going out into the city. Langata Road also thumping with traffic this morning. Jogo Road going past the station, coming in from Outer Ring, joining there. Folks who are trying to use that as a quicker route to get into the city might be surprised because it slows down as you get to the roundabout at the city stadium. Muranga Road also, as coming in from the city, is also quite packed. The Thika Super Highway, a lot of action there. In and outbound traffic on Limuru Road as well as Kiambu Road today, snaking along ever so slowly. And we're looking at the western part of the city has clogged up and now getting into traffic hour proper. All right, so your bypass is looking good. Eastern, Southern, Northern and Red Hill Link Road. You want to use that as an option to get out of the traffic mess that there is this morning. And then talk to us on SpiceFM KE on Twitter, text 40127.
Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
It is 36:98. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room, broadcasting from Nairobi, around the country on Spice FM and around the globe on Spice FM KE, YouTube and Facebook, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke. So, David, that question we were talking about before we took the break, this is with regards to media owners who are also doubling up in politics.
Wewe wapi kufutwa? Una discuss your employer hapa. Okay. Many times in the newsroom we have had these discussions about what we call the Chinese wall.
Yes.
We spoke that the commercial department, which pays our salary, should not interfere with the editorials. We've spoken that. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Those many years ago, siku hizi hatujui vile kalienda, isn't it?
Yep.
And we spoke about owners not interfering with editorial content. And I will say that many times we had very decent media ownership structures. We had, as we said before, the head of content, or rather the editor-in-chief, had said you would not come in and impose an advert on page 3.
Right.
Nowadays, I think commercial akisema page 3 nimeuza.
You move your story to page
7. You don't postpone adverts, isn't it? Because then it's what fits you. The whole idea is that, if even the editor, even myself, I have my own political bias, isn't it?
Yep.
What it is illegal to do or unethical is to push our personal influences into. The media owners have a right constitutionally to take political sides and all that. What is illegal or unethical is to put their personal influences into the editorial decision making. It's a matter as varied as possible. We have media houses that are owned by individuals, isn't it?
Yes.
Yet we have a few guys around here who own 52 or 54% controlling shareholding in media houses, and they dictate who becomes the employed editor and all that. So we may want to shout at, Nani owes this media house and they do this, isn't it? And we may not want to shout about NSC knows we have this majority shareholder who dictates this and that. All goes to matters ethical. The truth is, over the years, so before we move to politics, because our political cycle is a once in 5 year thing, we have left other factors unduly influence editorial decisions. What happens every day is, over time, the Chinese wall, as we call it, collapsed. The business head of business has override principle over the head of content suddenly, and in every media house, and so by that way we have also allowed media owners to unduly influence. And I want to say this specifically, that while we know there are media owners who know Nani owns this media house, we have other media owners who have escrowed their ownership via majority shareholding, and without them addressing the media from the doorsteps of the media house, they dictate who takes what position in media houses, and it's entirely unethical.
Does the Media Council have any, do you monitor the kind of influence that is emanating from such, specifically media owners who are also in politics, and then the resultant coverage or political coverage that comes out of the media platform?
Yes, and I will tell you the dilemma we have gotten into. We have had, a week ago I was at CA, where I'm rushing from here for a discussion with the DG there. It gets very dicey. I mean, half of the licenses they issued, just a very large portion, were issued to religious leaders, bishops, pastors, and all that. 2 years later,
those bishops,
the guys became MPs.
Right.
And I will tell you, half of the ethical breaches we have ni religious people. Ile matusi isi watu wanatoa watakatifu wanatoa kwa radio na TV ni ajabu. I mean, it's honest, I'm not lying. Those are the complaints we have, and you listen to them, you just can't believe it. So it's really a matter of values, principles, and all that. Because I am bishop of this church. 2 years later, I am vying.
So, David, I hear you saying, obviously, it is an unpalatable situation.
Yes.
You don't want to be. If this is the case, I mean, and as you're saying, these are the complaints that are coming in. And then you're hearing that, all right, you've talked about certain things being unethical, not being able to dictate who does what from a media perspective. It is not the preferred situation. But what measures are there in place to say, then let's change things around? And is it really enforceable? The opposite. Is the opposite enforceable to say that media owner then will not be able to do 1, 2, 3?
Let's rebuild the Chinese wall.
Can we do this? Put back the wall? With the way things have changed now, is it possible to actually do that? Or are we going to continue living in an unethical situation as you've prescribed?
These things you say have changed. What would you say they are?
Well, if you're going to say that somebody can dictate who then your editor will be, if you're saying that you were previously the only one who had monopoly over editorial content was the editor-in-chief, but that has changed now when you're looking at then commercial initiatives and you're looking at owner interests, then that has all changed in terms of who can dictate what. But then what we are saying now is that it's crawling over the lines of ethics.
But you see, I'm asking...
In terms of the decisions that can be made. Can you claw back on those things today so that you're now operating in an ethical manner?
You know, I now understand you clearly, but the change that in my mind is all pervading is the complete shift in our morality. What we understand to be good journalism, or what I would like to refer to as entrepreneur journalism.
Sure, then maybe the question that I'm asking then, David, is that then if there's a shift, if there's been a shift in morality and ethics, the way you would corral an animal who is stubborn and wants to go in this direction, and then you bring them back under the bridle, are you saying then that the council, with other measures to put in place and say, we are going back to this, and we're going to put stern measures in place and say, we shall operate under this and nothing else?
Well, not many walls can be rebuilt after being brought down. We can always start from... We can build new walls. I was careful not to say something that would make me look like I belong to one of the 2 or 3 wings. I like that you spoke the word morality, and Muga also spoke about the word morality. And we know, and we have seen editors who stood up and protected certain fortes, their spaces. And we know that despite certain influences and all that, we have seen editors or editorial teams that protect spaces and all that. Because you cannot over-police morals and ethics. Because it's not a set of rules, it's not a set of do's and don'ts.
Written on the wall.
It's about... what you think, what can be done and all that. It's not a set of, it's not like the 10 Commandments, like you summarize everything in do's and don'ts. It's about morals and all that. So it's about us interrogating what we want to do. It's about...
But I think there's something you can do, David. The same way you come up with guidelines, guidelines on election coverage, guidelines on this and the other, you can come up with guidelines on the relationship between media owners and the editorial.
Well, I like that you said guidelines and you use the word relationship. That's where the challenge comes in, all right? Yes, we could say that you would recruit. I know like the central bank has a final say on, I think, the top 6 or 7 heads of any bank. The central bank has a final say, isn't it? But you notice that we have no final say of if you want to open a radio or close it tomorrow. If you had a bank and you want to close it, you seek central bank approval. If you want to open a branch and all that, isn't it? You did not seek our approval to open this. You simply seek our approval to vet and accredit the media guys and all that. So there is a bit of that when it is, we can issue guidelines. They are ethical guidelines whose enforceability is really moral. But we are, and we have really tried a bit, especially matters newspaper and all that. If you want to access government advertising, you need to meet a certain threshold, otherwise we will not clear you and all that. Because when you want to set, it's very foolhardy to set rules you have no capacity or intention to implement. Then you look like a clown in town. We cannot dictate relationships we cannot dictate friendships. So if the media owner, I am a media owner, and my sister's son has a PhD in media and communication, and they will come here. So he will be CEO, Standard Group.
Look,
but he will call me uncle from time to time.
David, you were established so that you regulate and also protect the profession of journalism. Right?
Yes.
So if the profession of journalism is under threat because of the ownership structure of media houses that are operating in the country, you have a duty and an obligation to protect that.
That is true. Like Muga said earlier, that we also have the problem of entrepreneur journalism and all that. We know that the profession of journalism is under threat from, among others, ownership crisis. Even owners, we have one media station where the owner has to dictate, has to go through the news and dictate and all that. We must map. Otherwise, if it is now, then we dictate between the owner and the editor relationship kidogo, then relationship between government and the owner kidogo and all that. Unless you map it out, we will engage in ad hoc firefighting. That's why the makers of the Constitution, the Media Council Act, said we will not bother about all those matters, isn't it? We will measure you against balance, objectivity, professionalism and all that. And as I go back to the example I gave, that I could have a nephew, PhD here, isn't it, who calls me uncle from time to time. You will not measure that, and my nephew could be coming from Nigeria. You never know. These things. Yeah. You will not measure against that. You will measure against their balance, objectivity, and all that. There are things you can't measure.
Something has been said. It's more in the grapevines and spoken of in whispers that the standard of journalism in this country has dropped drastically. That the quality of work that journalists churn out is not up to scratch.
Kitheri media.
So, as I said, it's still at that level of discussion. Now, as a council, perhaps you have heard of this particular rumor, perhaps you've come across it. Is there any truth to it, really?
It's absolutely true. The last time, about a month ago, when I sat with some people to discuss, I think we had 3 spelling errors in one reading newspaper. We had 2 in another paper and all that. What we have done, because we are looking for the cheapest labor market and all that, in the days when people used a typewriter and all that, we had no spelling mistakes. Now you have spell check, and the spelling mistakes we take to print are unimaginable. So if you measure that, because the point is, again, you need to measure basics, isn't it? By that alone, because you need to say what you can prove. The standard of journalism, the proofreading and cross-checking have sunk extremely low. It's a shame. Unfortunately, because of the monies or whatever, I think the media owners are going for the cheapest, not for the finest. And I said newspaper because of that, isn't it? I've seen facts and allegations on TV, which you know to be entirely false and untrue. But they are peddled and they pass through checks and measures. And finally, it's something we're trying to work with the financial sector agencies in government. When media and all media goes around town to report figures and budgets and all that, the errors are astonishing. I say this because I am a journalist for many years and now I am government CEO. You see people push things across and you wonder, okay, you repeat that too. So we haven't invested. And I want to say this, Muga, that if you look at international media, look at, I will not mention any, this international media, we have about 3 prominent ones, isn't it? Look at the White House correspondents. He's a person who has been an expert in White House politics for 35 years. Yes. Look at a person in charge of the Washington. People have been there. Hey, unatoka college, juzi unapewa suti. Last week unaambiwa enda report presidential transition. You have never been part of an election anywhere, even an MCA by-election, and you're in charge of political transition and all that. It's a crisis we have. We really have the standards.
Which brings me back to you, David.
Yeah.
As the Media Council of Kenya, as the protectors of the journalism, and you've said all these things emanate from one. The media owner, the media owner trying to maximize on profit, the media owner trying to then go for the cheapest labor, and the cheapest labor will be new entrants all the time. What are you doing about that?
What do I do about it? Nimsaidie kulipa mshahara. Akiniambia hana pesa, there's no advertisement. So what do I do about it? The point is, what I'm saying is
set standards, set regulations. We know, for example, there is in medical profession, the board has decided this is how much you pay minimum for certain procedures. In legal profession, this is how much you pay. Why don't we have the same for media?
I will tell you something that unfortunately you do not know, that we have something called the human resource instruments. I will tell you that they exist even in these media houses where we are. But if we want to follow them, Mungu anajua. Number 2, we have set standards to become an accredited journalist. We've got a degree and a diploma and this, isn't it?
Yep.
After that, the experience, we cannot set standards about ufanye miaka hii. You have the minimum requirement. You have attended an accredited college. You have your degree, your diploma, or your work, isn't it? Now, after that, kama huyu mtu wako na experience ya White House and all that, is for the team to decide, isn't it? Sasa tukuje tuamulie mmetuma huyu na wako na miaka 2 experience mkacho ya miaka 7 ama mmedemote huyu na wako na ujuzi. We cannot manage that, isn't it? So really, as I told you, from the HR instruments, I told you, they exist. It's a matter, and then we don't deal with each other. It's a matter that we cannot do about it. It saddens me.
Let me cannot do it like the lawyers do. The LSK has, what do they call it?
Remuneration.
The remuneration scale.
Yes.
The same for the medical and dentist board. They have the remuneration scale. Why can't you have the same by a statutory body like the Media Council of Kenya on the remuneration scale in media in Kenya for the practice of journalism?
Yes, we have a remuneration scale for the lawyers who work in government. There is a salary scale. All the doctors, that's why you see people on strike and you see KBC on strike from time to time. You can have a remuneration scale, isn't it? You cannot dictate the remuneration scale for an entity who you don't fund. I mean, it's like we...
No, but they can set it themselves, surely.
Yes. You can say there's a minimum. Like the conversation we're having about NHIF now.
Yes.
And what it says is, the board has said for a procedure such as X.
Bad example, brother. Bad example. NHIF hospital bills.
No, doctors.
Yes.
For whatever, in whether you're working in public or private, this is how much you pay this kind of doctor.
Yes.
This is the minimum.
For this procedure,
this is the maximum.
This is what you pay.
Yes.
And this is set by the board.
Yes.
So if you're employed in a private facility, in a faith-based facility, in a public facility, this is how much you shall be paid for this kind of procedures. This is how much you shall pay for such procedures. It's the same for lawyers. There is a certain
They
minimum.
call it the Advocates Remuneration Order.
That one.
Yes, yes.
Now, similar.
Yes.
Journalist Remuneration Order.
Good thinking. We are unable to set minimum standards about who is a journalist, who is not, isn't it? I mean, we're talking about we were invaded by comedians and everybody else, and we are unable. We are glad that Parliament is taking half of them away. So what we're saying is that it's a complex matter to start with, because we are unable to set the standards of admission into the field. Because advocates and medics, kuna line imechorwa. You to cross the line,
you must not.
You must, isn't it?
Yep.
We have been unable to set the line to cross because of the freedom of expressions and freedom of the media. Anybody can write or publish, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
That's the problem. Because for medicine, apart from Muganga kutoka Zanzibari,
Right.
you can't.
There's a
line you
threshold
can't,
that you
isn't it?
must,
Because
yes.
but HAPA, there's no threshold, isn't it?
Yes.
So you cannot therefore set standards for a threshold. You can't manage because you can't chase them out.
Actually, David, those lines are crossed every day.
Yes.
Literally.
For
whether it's doctors, whether it's lawyers. Remember, people go to see these individuals for very many reasons.
Yes.
Doctors, some of those reasons you may not particularly want anybody to know, so you're willing to just pay. Some, because of the nature, they will tell you, if you want this thing done in this way, we know this is what is written, but this is what I am going to charge. Lawyers, the same. But at least there is something you can look at. And I like the way you've explained it. You see, the ecosystem within which journalism is practiced is completely different. And we are the cusp. We are right in the firing line for all these wonderful things that our constitution actually brought to us. It's part of our trade, but it also enables a finger to be pointed at us with great clarity. However, you are the council. And you are familiar with this thing more than other people.
You're making the hot seat with fake fire. This is hot with fake fire. As I said earlier, as long as I do not determine the line, if we determine the line, like now, if we accredit someone, isn't it?
Yes.
We will push. And if we have managed to make sure that in this country, there is no criminal or civil proceedings against unaccredited journalists or media personnel in the line of their duty. We have made sure that doesn't happen, whether it's judiciary or the police and all that, because we determine the line you cross, isn't it? But people whose line we did not determine, whose admission we did not determine, we cannot manage. So the point is about that determination.
It's about that,
so
that
unaccredited journalists, their conduct and all that we can, isn't it?
Yes.
But now we have general people there who says I was the media and therefore I want support and therefore you can't. So really, the point is that while what you are saying is valid and all that, it's a discussion we should, because if we cannot determine admission into the media space, isn't it? Then you cannot entirely determine everything that is exercised in this space.
What do you use to determine accreditation?
The law is very clear. Number one is academic qualification, minimum diploma, and upwards from an accredited college. But number two, evidence of regular practice. There are people who have written continuously and all that. So you provide at least 3 published articles from an accredited media house also.
Right.
Then we have a team that goes through that to accredit. So number 1 is academic. Number 2 is normal practice and all that. Then we admit that.
So you already have a base.
Yes.
You already know that anybody who is walking around with a Media Council of Kenya accreditation has passed a minimum threshold set by law.
Yes.
So all those stories you're telling us you cannot determine, you're already determined.
You know,
it's about the profession of journalist.
Yeah, give an example.
Not somebody who's working in the commercial department or no, it is somebody who is working as a journalist in the Republic of Kenya.
I will give you an ad hoc example. Right. The Teachers Service Commission employs and pays, isn't it?
Yes.
And they will determine, and we can have CBAs, isn't it? I do not employ you, man. So my negotiation with hapa, I was not part of it. That is the difference. I don't know.
So we don't look like we are running a trade union conversation here. There's the other issue of now the continuous accreditation that you do.
Yes.
It's now annual.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
And we have actually even discussed it here. Yeah. The other professions have the CPDs, the continuous professional development. So you go through and you are sure that by the time you're getting re-accredited, you've either practiced and you've also gone through some training, some refresher courses.
Yes.
Is that a possibility for the Media Council?
Yes, we have actually done a bit of work around it. We started, you will notice that in the past 5 years, we have had a major movement from newsrooms to public sector media and communication. And, public sector, we have CPDs for accountants and stuff like lawyers and all that. And we have worked around that regular training because there's a lot of conflict between government entities and media. And especially I have really issues with guys who leave newsrooms and start to manage media from government offices. I don't know what happens to them. They suddenly do the opposite of what we expect them to do. So we have had those discussions. Yes, we have discussions about CPDs, especially training. Number 1, we have set up the MCK Africa Academy for training. You already have a journalism degree. Then you want to move into sports or business and all that.
Yeah.
We are moving into that for real training and all that. And it is, we realize that, well, apart from the other workshops and seminars, we have set up really a training unit. We have online courses. We have put up a very robust online training manual and all that. Because these things, to develop CPD, you must, first of all, I think we are concluding the NITA accreditation this week, the National Industrial Training Authority, because we say we are offering courses in this and this and this. The only course we do that is basic is we call it Media 101. That is, you have your degree or diploma from anywhere you want to join media, or you're already recruited as a lawyer in the media and you want to be taught about the basics of journalism.
Kind of like a refresher.
Code of conduct.
Yes. Yeah. Ethics, code of conduct and all that. Then the others is about reporting business, and we're partnering with the Strathmores and all that, reporting medicine with AMREFs and all that. So we are moving towards that so that when you come in, you say, I have taken the specialty courses. However, as we move towards that, the newsrooms and media owners have collapsed specialist desks. The help desk, we are trying to build them from
the grassroots.
Yeah, from grassroots, yes. I want to say from bottom up, and all that, isn't it? We are reconstruct, and they existed, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sports desk iko kidogo, but ad hoc, isn't it? Suddenly, we have no international news on our channels. I don't know what happens to us. So we have no African nini. Well, I'm saying specific examples don't apply universally, isn't it? Yet when we grew up, we had business desks, health desks, and with specialities.
Yeah.
We have collapsed specialities, and therefore what we have is a jack of all trades, master of none. Someone is reporting from parliament politics today, tomorrow they are the treasury, the other day they're in state house and all that. So we have a shallow, whitewashing.
Jacks of all trade.
And it's really sad because what we have done that, we have carried that deep into newspapers. We had that FM stations where we got everybody to basically just talk in vernacular and all that. Now our newspapers also have, you can't look for facts in newspapers. You
don't know. David,
yes.
Hour has come to an end. And we thank you very much for joining us in this conversation. We've talked about various things on, we still want you to come back as we go into deep campaign season on election preparedness and media conduct and coverage of the election. Asante sana.
Thank you very much. We will be back. We will be trying to work very hard about what we will do for
spice up your life.
The SpiceFM Newswire is brought to you by InDriver. Choose your preferred driver, mode of transport, and negotiate your fare to your destination for a safe, comfortable, and affordable trip only with InDriver.
The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
Ordered the House Security Committee to turn the after members raised concerns that the road element above the existing highway provides a vantage point from where criminals could stage an attack on Parliament. Kitutu Masaba MP Shadrach Mose said that Parliament is a key national institution that requires strategic security considerations. Now, as Kenya heads to elections in August, political parties are being urged to ensure they meet the gender quota so as to increase women representation in elected positions. Kenya has lagged behind on the gender quota, with women remaining largely unrepresented for years despite calls from various players and stakeholders to have a balance. President Uhuru Kenyatta ignored advice from former Chief Justice David Maraga to disband Parliament, which he said remains illegally constituted for failing to meet the two-thirds gender rule as outlined in the Constitution. And to ensure that the two-thirds gender rule is met in the next Parliament that will be constituted after the August election, the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission is piling pressure on political parties to ensure the nomination lists are gender-sensitive, failure to which they will not be approved. Now, National Assembly Speaker Justin Muthui has approved the expulsion of 6 Jubilee MPs from key parliamentary committees in its communication. Muthui noted that he was satisfied that due process was followed in discharging the members. The 6 legislators allied to the Deputy President United Democratic Alliance Party are Laikipia Women Representative Kate Wagurugur, who served in the Departmental Committee on Livestock, William Kipkemoy, who served in the Information, Elkato Olemitito Defense, Japheth Kareke Mbiuki Environment, David Gikagia Energy, and Ali Wario, who has been discharged from the Select Committee on Regional Integration. As is the requirement, the Speaker said the MPs have been duly notified of the intended ejection by the majority party whip. The ruling Jubilee Party suffered another blow in the National Assembly. These after legislators aligned to the Deputy President ganged up to shoot down a procedural motion that sought to reduce the publication period for the Elections Amendment Bill 2022 from 14 to 5 days. 62 members voted against the motion that was moved by the Leader of Majority Amos Kimunya, with only 43 supporting it. Among the key proposals is the 23 clauses to cap the time limit for lodging an electoral dispute with the Commission to 48 hours. It further seeks to provide complementary mechanisms for voter identification and transmission of external results. The government has released 6 billion shillings to cover 1.2 million households in its commitment to ensure that all Kenyans can access quality Medicare as provided for in the Big Four agenda and in line with Vision 2030. To this end, President Uhuru Kenyatta will launch a universal healthcare upskill program with the aim to push UHC registration to the next level and to ensure that the most vulnerable are cushioned. Government spokesperson Cyrus Oguna said the program does provide an opportunity for members of the society to register, adding that health is an aspect of development. Now, 4 people have died after the vehicle they were traveling in ran over an improvised explosive device along the Wajir Geril Road. Police reports indicate that a Toyota Land Cruiser was hit by a roadside bomb, killing all its occupants. Security agencies deployed officers to the area to assess the situation. Wajir East Member of Parliament Rashid Kasim called on security agencies to enhance security and track the suspects. Internationally, and Guinea-Bissau has launched major investigation into a failed attempt to overthrow President Umaru Sissoco Embalo, who survived a gun attack in the uprising that claimed 11 lives, according to the government of the West African nation. Heavily armed men surrounded government buildings in the capital Bissau, where Embalo and his prime minister were believed to be attending a cabinet meeting. Embalo later told reporters that he had been unharmed during a 5-hour gun battle which he described as a plot to wipe out the government in Guinea-Bissau, one of Africa's most unstable countries. Now, Turkey launched deadly strikes against Kurdish targets in Iraq and Syria, where Kurd forces have been left reeling from the largest Islamic State group attack in nearly 3 years. The raids targeted shelters, tunnels, caves, ammunition depots, bases and training camps operated by the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party and the People's Protection Units. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
All right, in the middle of traffic hour, quite a lot of it, most parts. We're seeing some traffic on the southern bypass today, and that's coming off Mombasa Road. The reason is because of that diversion on Mombasa Road. A little bit, so you're going to have to go a little bit left as you're going into the city and then use the southern bypass or then come back onto Mombasa Road. A little bit of a hiccup here and there, but it should be manageable this morning. We're also looking at traffic coming out of that industrial area circuit. Langata Road continues, Raila Odinga Way, bumper to bumper, through and through, from roundabout X to roundabout Y. It's absolutely crazy this morning. We're looking at Ngong Road, especially at the community area, and then going into the city. That has slowed down considerably. The Thika Superhighway still thumping this morning, as well as Kiambu Road looking really, really tight. We're seeing the same thing on Limuru Road as well, in and outbound traffic and that whole Parklands area. So traffic hour still is where we are. Let's talk on SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text 40127, trying to keep things moving this morning.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation
7
Room,
minutes after 8.
the only way to start your day.
Welcome to the third hour of Kenya's biggest conversation this Thursday, the 3rd day of February 2022. We are live on Spice FM. We are online, Spice FM KE on YouTube and Facebook. And for the next 1 hour, we are also live on KTN Home. We have a new guest in the studio. Before we introduce her, let's hear the day's proverb.
Amechagua nazi, akapata dafu.
Amechagua nazi, akapata dafu.
Yes. So,
translate.
They have chosen the coconut. And lo and behold, what have they also acquired in the process?
Beverage.
That delightful beverage
the
that
dafu.
You find within the coconut, the dafu. But I like your interpretation of it.
Which one?
Isn't it a nice thing to have a faulty memory in the morning?
Yes.
Your interpretation actually took the matter, should we say, to greater depth. You said, look, are we looking at, now this is my interpretation of it, are we looking at something that has a good outcome? Are we looking at something that has a greater outcome than you anticipated? And if that opens another discussion, was the outcome necessarily good? Yes. That was what you did.
That was today.
Oh, wow.
Goodness gracious me. Let's start again, Eric. Thursday. 3rd February.
It was about this proverb.
20.
Was he awake?
Was in the studio.
Our guest is Teresa Njoroge. She is a founder of an organization called Clean Start Kenya. It's Thursday. It's hashtag Justice Thursday. And to expand the conversation on Justice Thursday today, we want to look at babies behind bars. So there are very many children who are actually in Kenyan prisons, not because they have been found convicted and sentenced to prison, but because they are children of mothers who are in prison. Teresa, thank you very much for joining us. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Karibu sana. We call that the hot seat, but because we're talking about babies, we will not make it hot at all. We want to have an interesting, nice, and easy conversation.
Thank you, like children.
Yes. Tell us about the organization Clean Start.
Clean Start is an organization that we had the privilege and honor of setting up post our own experiences as mothers and women within the criminal justice system. So we've been through the arrest, prosecution, conviction with our own children, spent time at the different women prisons here in Kenya, and then got together and said, because of the hardships we experienced, the injustices, and most importantly, what our children had to go through because of our own imprisonment, we've got to change things and make it right. And so Clean Start now works to empower women and children who are impacted by the criminal justice system in the country.
Tell us your own story.
I worked within the banking sector, and then I got arrested and fraudulently charged. And I say that because it was for a crime that I hadn't committed. The arresting officer knew very well I hadn't committed that crime, but continued with the prosecution. And I eventually got imprisoned for an entire year at Langata Women Maximum Prison. And I had just been blessed with my firstborn daughter, so I got to serve that sentence with my daughter. A very grueling journey. Through the court system and then our prisons, very tough, very retributive, and then very harsh when it comes to reintegrating back into society. But the impact continues as a mother trying to raise her children, even though I was exonerated, cleared and compensated. The impact continues with my children. So it's a lifelong journey.
The thing that let me rephrase this question. When you say it was difficult to be integrated back into society, what are some of the key things that made this integration difficult?
The stigma. People fear people coming out of prison for obvious reasons. Prisons are associated with criminals. So the stigma. You cannot easily get a certificate of good conduct, which is a requirement if you're looking for any employment. You do not have any capital. You are not earning any money from the day you got arrested all the way through the criminal justice system to prison. So you're coming out a beggar, you're dependent. And here you are, you need to pay rent, you need to buy food, you're a mother, you need to take care of your child. It becomes very difficult. Now that's just the external. Internally, you're a broken shell. The trauma of what you've been through from the day you got arrested, going through that court system as a criminal, and then enduring the very retributive penal institution system.
I hope I won't be pushing the envelope too much, but could you talk a little bit about the retributive system that we have in our... Yes.
The prisons, are a product of, we took over from the British Protectorate when we gained independence, and that was founded on the British common law. So these prisons were ideally, from the buildings themselves, were built by the Brits, and like in most African nations that were colonized, these are buildings that were set up for people who would resist colonialism, the colonial rule. And so, and they were very much geared towards the male population. So coming into this system as a female, in the very first place, they don't cater for the distinctive needs of a female, right from the police cells. As a female, it doesn't cater for you. And then the training is it's very punitive.
The training of the officers.
Of the officers.
Yes.
To put in custody these people who are coming in. It's very punitive. And so you come into this system that's not looking at you as a human being, so to speak. It's looking at you as someone who is a danger to society. Now, unfortunately, a huge percentage of those coming into these institutions, unfortunately, are not criminals. They are petty survival offenders. And for some of us, we are victims of the justice system. You've not committed any crime, but because of the injustices within our criminal justice system, you find yourself in this situation. The food you eat, where you sleep, prison is meant to break you. So from the building, from the way you're treated, the language, the culture, everything is meant to break you.
Okay. So, I mean, as you speak about this, Teresa, now, with that as an individual, and then here we are introducing children into this. So we already know what happens if you have been convicted in this country as a woman, and let's say you were pregnant at the time of conviction, you will deliver your baby within the system. If you have been convicted at the time where you have a small child under a certain age, you will then serve your sentence with your child. Now, having seen that there are certain provisions that are hugely lacking within the system, how much more then are we looking for that for which is provided for a child? Because this is not the first time that this has been covered. We saw the story that, was reported in the Standard a few days ago, but we've seen stories over the last 10 years easily about the state of children in prisons. What is or not provided for kids?
We are a nation that's acting blind to these children because they are there. Women are coming into prisons pregnant. Women are coming accompanied by their children, 0 to 4 years, to prison. And women are leaving their children on the outside. Before I answer your question, Ndu, I'd like to shed some light on some statistics from our studies. 90% of the women who are in our penal institutions are single and the sole breadwinners of their families. 60% of their children are below the ages of 10 years. Of the women who come into prison, they're allowed to be accompanied by their children who are aged 0 to 4 years. So the other children above the age of 5 are left on the outside. And 39% of the imprisoned mothers do not know the whereabouts of their children from the point of arrest. So there are these children, that we have left, whether accompanying their mothers to prison or left on the outside in very traumatic situations. When a woman is convicted, she's given a commuter warrant. That's what allows the officer in charge of the institution to admit this mother. The child does not have that. The commuter warrant, what it does, it gives accountability for the mother. But because the child does not have that, coming to your question, there's no one who's accountable for this child.
In prison?
In prison. They do not have a commuter warrant. The person who has been sentenced is the mother. That's the person who has been admitted to prison. But she's accompanied by this invisible person who's 0 to 4 years to prison.
So legally, there is no recognition that there is a 0 to 4 year old child in prison.
Exactly. And that's where things like the food, proper food, when you think about the child, what they need, especially in the first 1,000 days of this child, which is the brain growth opportunity for any human being. That's the foundation. And whatever is done within this first 2 years of this child, then determines the lifespan.
Rest of their life, yes.
Yeah. So when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to clothing, when it comes to the rights of this child growing up behind prison, there's no one you can go and.
So the system, the law and the government does not recognize that there's a child who is maybe 3 months old, a year old in prison. So they don't provide for immunization services.
Right.
They don't provide for, even by the time they get to weaning, they don't provide for such. They don't provide for diapers and such.
They provide for the immunization, but when it comes to the other provisions, it's really dependent on well-wishers. And we know in this country, the Kenya prison sector is one of the most underfunded sector. Even for the adults who they're responsible for. How much more so for children who it's a favor for them to accompany their mother to prison. And what really, really hurts, because we're not saying that if you commit a crime, you should not be culpable and responsible for the consequences. The painful part is that a majority of these women are being taken to prison for very petty, mundane reasons. For example, she stole something from her employer because the employer did not pay her salary on time. She was hawking in the streets because she didn't have a license. She was loitering. Now, these crimes essentially warrant a less than 3 years in prison. In essence, by law, they are fit for an uncustodial sentence and a community service order. Imagine the cost of putting this woman behind bars because she did not wear a mask, because there are women behind bars for 5 to 6 months because they were caught without a mask and they couldn't raise a bail of 20,000 bob, vis-a-vis this woman being left to buy a mask or being enabled and supported
for 10 shillings
and continue taking care of her children. But now she's being separated from her children because of this mask. And the children, that spiral effect continues. Have we empowered these women? Have we empowered these women by taking them to prison because they were hawking without a license? We cannot arrest, prosecute, convict our social issues. That's why prisons are full of the poor, those who cannot afford legal representation, who cannot pay bail. And then our children, a whole generation is going through very severe and traumatic issues because we've criminalized poverty. And that's the hurtful part.
Teresa, there's some statistics that you've given us of, for example, 90% of the women in prison today are single and they were the sole breadwinners for their families. 60% of their children who are not in prison are under 10 years. You've told us that out of the women in prison, 39% don't know the whereabouts of the children that they left outside. So they don't know. Now, do we have statistics of the number of children who have accompanied their parents to prison?
We don't have the statistics, but they range from anywhere between 500, the number keeps going up and down.
So at least 500 children.
500, sometimes it drops down to 200, 300. It keeps rising and falling depending on admissions and releases.
And this is across the country? Or are we talking about particular facilities?
It's across the country.
How many women prisons do we have?
34 women prisons.
So in 34 women prisons, we have at least 100 children who are not criminals who are in prison.
Yes.
With their mothers.
At any given time.
At any given time.
Yeah.
It's a very high number.
Very high number. And to imagine the future and to imagine they're coming in and leaving, coming in and being admitted. And this is the other thing. 2020, 2021, the numbers of imprisoned women went down because of COVID-19. But immediately 2022, COVID has now come down, the numbers rise up. Why? Has crime increased? Did we have a problem in 2020, 2021 when these women who are trying to fend for their children were within us in community and society? It doesn't add up.
Of the numbers that are in prison, because you've also talked about a majority of the women who are in prison were petty offenders. and they're there for, those short jail sentences. Do you have the numbers for that?
Of the petty offenders?
Yes.
They range between 60 to 70% of the population at any given time.
And by petty, we are talking about a jail term of how long?
A minimum between 6 months to a maximum of 3 years.
What I found, which is of interest in what you're saying, do we have cases or do we have data or information about people who have received non-custodial sentences in this country?
They are there. There are few. We're still collecting this data and this evidence. We're about to release our first research project in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
So that's the problem. Data has been a big issue in this space. So even for us to prove what our experiences were has taken a while, because this is not an area that is funded and resourced. So very soon we'll have that data, but there are very few, because our courts overuse custodial sentencing.
Do we even have a structure that would be able to accommodate non-custodial sentences?
It's there. And if
is it breathing? Is it alive?
It's there.
It's limping.
We could do better. We could definitely do better. And if we could put the focus that we're putting in custodial sentences in the non-custodial sentencing, and I'm very grateful because they're very forward and progressive judicial officers, the likes of Honorable Senior Resident Magistrate Kibosia, Honorable Dr. Alice Masharia, whose book I have come with today, who's written an amazing book, Rights of the Child, Mothers, and Sentencing, the case of Kenya. These are amazing judicial officers who we are working with to see to it that we implement non-custodial sentencing in a way that works. And this is what we're saying at Clean Start. If we have been able to empower close to 1,000 imprisoned women and support them in their reintegration, but our efforts are being watered down by the constant bringing in of petty offenders, then we get overwhelmed. We could curb this at the point of arrest, work with the national police, work with the chiefs and the local administrators and say, if this Mama Mboga did not have a license, if she didn't have a mask, there is a way of resolving this issue and not taking it all the way to prosecution and the courts, because that's not a solution. It's only tearing apart this family. And so empowering them while they're still on the outside, because once they go through that system, then the trauma, by the time you heal the trauma that this woman has gone through, I'm telling you, the detrimental trauma that the children who have been left on the outside, because right now we're talking about the hundreds of children accompanying their mothers in prison. The children left on the outside, because they are in the thousands. This woman has 2 to 3 children, so most of them are left on the outside, raising themselves. In that house, they can't pay rent. They're the ones who end up in the streets, raped, dropping out of school, substance use, and so on and so forth. It's crippling just to be decent.
When you tell this story, one can actually picture, well, at least I can, and I can picture it in 3 dimensions. And one of the dimensions I'm looking at is of the people who go through this very adverse process. In your survey, in your research, did you also factor in people who, because of this experience and who started off as just petty offenders, who then evolve and become hardcore criminals?
That's the very unfortunate truth.
Let's talk about that after we take this break, right? So we're having a conversation with Teresa Njoroge. She's the founder of an organization called Clean Start Kenya. This is an organization that brings together women who have gone through the prison system or those who are still in the prison system and looking at how to support them. This conversation today, Justice Thursday, is about babies behind bars. These are children below the age of 4 who have accompanied their mothers to prison, not because they are criminals, the children, but because they basically needed to go with their mothers to prison. And then let's also talk about the children who were left by these mothers who go to prison. 90% of women, according to the statistics we've been given by Teresa, who are in prison were actually single parents and the sole breadwinners. So what happens to the children that have been left outside of the prison system? This is a conversation we're having this morning on KTN Home, SpiceFM, and online. We'll be back shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
No, this wheelbarrow, how can you give people wheelbarrow? His party symbol is an umbrella. Is he distributing umbrellas in Makueni?
Have you been told if we don't lock between 10 to 4, this is what we're saving?
You try and call them, the same person who was in your house every day, because they know you are influential and you will give them votes. Call them after 1 month and see if they'll pick up their phone.
Don't tell your member of parliament that you want him to come and build a school, you want him to come and do a hospital. That is not the work of the member. Now that we have devolution in this country, these resources should go to those devolved units.
You have to have strong, independent institutions. And you have to have police who has the right to take the biggest town in the country and question, why did you do this and that, and send them to court if necessary.
Joel in Kericho, good morning.
Salama sana Eric, habari ya asubuhi.
Salama kabisa. Mbunge wako ni nani?
Anaitwa Seriousness Martin, hapa ni Ainamoi.
Seriousness Martin, Ainamoi.
Yes. Sasa ile juma nampambia yeye nini? Amalize aende.
Oh wow.
Asante sana.
That's it.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Cloudy at 19 in Nairobi, highs of 25 and lows of 15 today. It's mostly sunny at 18 in Nakuru, highs of 26 and lows of 14. We'll see lows of 13 in Nyeri, where it's partly sunny at 16, going to highs of 25. 24 will be the high in Eldoret, where it's partly cloudy at 17, and we'll see lows of 12. In Kisumu, 22 and sunny, highs of 27 and lows of 19, while in Kakamega at 22 it is sunny. It'll go to highs of 28 and lows of 16. Cloudy at 28 in Mombasa, highs of 31 and lows of 25, while in Malindi it's mostly cloudy at 28 as well. We'll go to highs of 31 and lows of 26. It's sunny in Kampala at 21, highs of 28 and lows of 19, while partly cloudy in Dar es Salaam at 27. We'll see highs of 32 and lows of 26. Johannesburg is cloudy at 21, highs of 29 and lows of 17. While it's hazy in Lagos at 21, we'll see highs of 33 and lows of 21. Cloudy at 24 in Kinshasa, highs of 29 and lows of 23.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
Still continues in traffic hour. Most parts of the city with quite a lot of traffic. So Mombasa Road in and outbound around Imara Daima, that continues from the Weybridge at Sabaki out towards General Motors. We'll see it slow moving of traffic. Airport Road out onto Outer Ring, that slows down some. You're going to see a little bit of traffic at the nook of the Southern Bypass coming off Mombasa Road. That's because of that diversion that was there earlier this morning. Not quite sure if it's still there, but we'll have to find out. Gong Road snaking along very slowly out towards Community and into the city. Langata Road all the way from the very top towards Aerodrome on Uhuru Highway. That's quite a stretch. Looking a little bit better on Raila Odinga Way. Jogo Road and that whole area continues. Coming out of Westerns is still a thing, as it is on the Thika Superhighway, getting a little bit better, but still moving slowly past Mathari. Okay, SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Talk to us there, text 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Mornings
done right.
Continues. SpiceFM, KTN Home and Online. Eric Latiff, CT Muga Ndu Okoh, and our guest Teresa Njoroge, founder of Clean Start Kenya. We were talking about babies behind bars. Before we took the break, CT had asked you, From your statistics, what have you seen about the children who were left behind by their parents, who then went to prison? What becomes of those children? Maybe you can even give us some stories of the women that you are members of the Clean Start and their own stories. When they went to prison and they had left their children out, how did they find their children?
It's devastating. And, it's sad to say that I'm lost for choice of which stories to give because there are just so many. One of our team members was in prison for a period of 6 months because of a debt, which she eventually ended up paying. And this debt, she incurred it because her husband had a heart condition. And so as she was trying to sort that out, and may her husband's soul rest in peace, she ended up, being taken to prison because she was lagging behind with this debt. To date, even post coming out of prison and being separated with her daughter, paying for that debt, to date, she has still not been able to get back with her daughter. Why? The family that took her daughter, her daughter really bonded with the other children in that family. And so separating that child then affects this child even further. So that's an impact that continues on post the 6 months and a debt that eventually got paid. Another one got into prison because of buying a second-hand phone, which was involved in a robbery case. Eventually, it was established she had just bought a second-hand phone. She had been in prison for 1.5 years. She was a business second-hand clothes dealer. Left behind 3 children as a single mother. Those children lived in the streets. The firstborn son was raped while he was in the streets. The secondborn, and these children dropped out of school, trying to move from one place, from one den to the next, with their little daughter, as mom was behind bars for 1.5 years. It took years for this lady to rebuild her life when she got out, fast looking for her children, where they went to. I could give a case of a woman who's still in prison 22 years later, who gave birth, left her 6-year-old daughter on the outside, and went into prison, was convicted pregnant, gave birth to the boy, who's now on the outside. The daughter is now 27 years old. She's done well because she's graduated with a communication degree, again through well-wishers. But the son, who was born in prison, has dropped out of school, and we're being unable to support him finish his Form 4. Why? The adverse childhood experiences. He's now into drugs. We're trying to put him in school. It's such a challenge. The effects. I could talk about stories on and on and on about these women. I must talk about the gains, though.
Yes.
Because we've got amazing people. For example, the late, may his soul rest in peace, Father Peter Mainberg, a Catholic priest who, post my imprisonment, went to Langata Women Maximum Prison and built the first child daycare so that these children could then have a space where they go to outside the prison walls, and they can see color, they can grow up. Because my daughter, immediately we got out of prison, anytime she would see anyone with other clothes, because she was used to the zebra, prison, exactly. So all these other clothes and the color really, really made her uncomfortable, because those children grow up thinking prison is the world. This is life. Then when they come out into this world, they're like, where is this you've brought me? But Father Peter built the first daycare at Langata, which gives children a good start. And then I must talk about the Africa Early Childhood Network, AFCAN. They've come in, they've partnered with us and other key stakeholders, and we're coming up with the first childcare policy for Kenya Prison Service that will manage, and it's a framework that will help the service handle these children. So there are some strides, beautiful strides and achievements that we've achieved. But it can never
How about
and I
prisons
appreciate
authorities?
that.
Is there something positive that you can say that the prisons authorities have done over the years to also, start, even if it's informally, recognizing the children, supporting the mothers who are there with their children?
Indeed, a lot, because even we, through the very difficult circumstances, were supported by the warders the best they could with the little they have to take care of our own children.
And where is this little they have coming from? Because as you say that now, I'm thinking prison warders, obviously in the women's prison, are women, and likelihood that they have their own family. So there's a bit of a sensitivity, or at least empathy, that comes from them. But like you say, this little they have, is it coming from their personal own that they then share, or is it from a kitty that's available within the system? What are we talking about?
Yes, I know of prison officers who have gotten into their pocket to get those diapers, to get that milk, and to get whatever it is they can get for these children. Plus, I do know of well-wishers, faith-based organizations, different civil society organizations, individuals who come together and bring dignity packs for these children, the Vaseline, the soap, the diapers, the green gram flour, the porridge flour, and donate to the church, to the churches come and donate to the prisons so that these children can get, some decent nutrition and comfort as they grow up. So it's well-wishers who come in and support prisons. And I would urge the society. There's a prison near you in the 47 counties, a woman prison. Go in there, offer help, offer support. These are our sisters. These are our aunties. These are our members of this society who have been put into prison. So we need to do something.
Obviously, you've had engagement with the law, even as you have come out. And in the work that you've done, the engagement is beyond civil society or those who are, helping out. And there has been legal processes that you've had engagement with. What is the status of the, yes, they've been called forgotten or invisible. But is there at least the recognition that something ought to be done about these children who are in, and also those ones who have been left out when their mothers are incarcerated?
Yes, there is. And I'm so grateful years later.
By government?
By government.
Okay.
And by government, I mean, for example, the Department of Children's Service, the Kenya Prison Service, now through partnership with stakeholders, they have admitted that indeed there is severe and very detrimental impact on these children, and these children in the very first place should not be here. So how is it that we can ensure that we get custodial, non-custodial sentencing for the mothers where possible, probation sentences where possible, but for those who are still within the system, this child care policy, the very first, 2021 to 2030, it should be launched in a few weeks. The very first will provide a framework of care. And I cannot forget of amazing partners such as the Kenya Pediatric Association, who have come on board as well to put their weight in to support these children. So there is admission, there is admission, and there is something that is being done for the very first time that we can say, at least there's a framework within which we can work to recognize these children and do something about it. Yeah.
How about with the justice system? So we've had conversations here with the executive director of the National Council on the Administration of Justice. It brings together people in the entire justice sector. Okay, so from the police through the judiciary, the DPP, the prison services, and then also brings in civil society organizations. So Clean Start, for example, would participate in these conversations where you raise these issues at the NCAJ or even starting from the court users committees, so that the judiciary, as we wait for ratification of the policy and all, what is it that the judiciary can start doing immediately and have conversations on? For example, that encouragement of non-custodial sentencing, special recognition of nursing mothers when you're sentencing, special recognition of pregnant women when you're sentencing, or women who can be proven to be the sole breadwinners, and then special recognition of that at sentencing stage. Have you engaged them?
We have, and we're very grateful for the listening ear and the progression with which they are taking this matter. And we must also appreciate the fact that our Honorable Chief Justice Martha Koome has heart for these children and children generally who are impacted by the criminal justice system, and is doing something about it. So we believe in a few years we'll see a big change. And I must say, even before they get to the judiciary, we can go a step further. The police, at the point of arresting this woman, on that charge sheet or the arrest sheet, you can ask this woman, are you a mother? Are you pregnant? How many children do you have?
Do they have a caregiver?
Is there a caregiver who can be left with your children? Because when you arrest me and you don't care whether I am pregnant, if you arrest me today as Teresa Njoroge today, you're not just arresting Teresa Njoroge. The impact of you arresting me will also fall on my 2 children. So they should be factored in. At the point when I was arrested and was going through the court case and going into prison, I was pregnant and had a child. That should have been a factor. Being, okay, to them, they found, in the very first instance, they said that I was a criminal before I got exonerated. They should have factored in, I have never had any other, it's first time. Exactly. So those kinds of things should be factored in. Has this woman ever been involved in any criminal activity before? Is she pregnant? Is she a mother? They should be factored in, so that when the magistrate has that file, they know that this is not just Teresa Njoroge. This is Teresa Njoroge, she's pregnant, or she has an infant, or she's leaving behind 4 children. And at that point, make that decision and issue a statement that as she's going in for a custodial sentence, there are 4 children being left behind, and I would like these 4 children taken into X institution for care. So right now, there's nothing like that. They're just left by themselves, or I consider Teresa Njoroge is pregnant, and I will defer her sentence for a year or 2 years for her to go give birth, and then we will take up this matter after 2 years. Or, given the nature of the nonviolent crime of not having a mask, or of fighting about a hanging line for clothes, or that she was loitering, or she had brewed changa. This is non-violent, so there's no need. She's no harm to society. So I'm going to give her an uncustodial sentence. All those things can be taken into consideration if, at the point of arrest, our police capture all that.
Do we need a law for that? Because when you speak to judicial officers, magistrates, and judges, they say, we are confined by what the law tells us to do. Do we need a law to come in place and say, this is the information that shall go into a charge sheet?
Yes. They can, and the judicial officers can bring about that. We are reformists, surely, as a nation. If we are seeing, we who are grown-ups, what the impact of our decisions is having on our children who are under our care. These children are looking up to us, the decisions we make. Then for crying out loud, those are the decisions that we can and should come up with.
Teresa, when in your organization and in your interaction with other groups of individuals and institutions, do you also interact with politicians? Let me explain to you why I'm asking the question, okay? We've been looking and discussing a very interesting matter that relates very directly to our electoral laws and how our politicians have managed to change it rather considerably. In fact, we haven't quite absorbed the import of it. But had this thing come in 2 years ago, I wouldn't have been looking at it in the same way I'm looking at it now, 5 months to an election. But these are the people who change our laws. So if you want changes or a structure that you can bring forth your suggestions on, if it isn't anchored in law, it gets tricky. The magistrates, judges, their hands are tied. Okay? But if there's a law that goes into some nitty-gritty details that caters to some of these things, it becomes a lot easier for someone to make a case for these things. But if it isn't there, it's tricky. So,
thank you.
talk to politicians.
We will.
Engage them more. Yes.
We will.
Yes.
We definitely will. We're still young. We started with the survival bit of things. You know, we're coming out of prison. We don't have food. Bus fare is an issue. Rent, survival. But we're at a place and a situation, even as an organization, where we can now sit on the table and say, and engage the politicians to change the laws. So the systemic bit, and it's part of our strategic objective. So we're keen on that.
One of the interesting things I found out when talking to people who work in the prison services, what is contained as part of their procurement for things that, for instance, I'm talking specifically about food that people should eat and what people actually eat. Two very different things. But this is something that runs across many government institutions, whether it is schools, whether it is hospitals. Again, the same group of people can be very instrumental in ensuring certain things are done. In the absence of that legal structure, a lot of the changes that we're talking about become very difficult. If it's there, a judge will look at it, they will know, and they can easily say, now, this is how we're going to enforce it. Yes.
Indeed. Yes. Indeed. Thank you for that. We will keep pursuing at it, in collaboration with the judicial officers who we have approached and are in agreement, and other players, and engage the lawmakers. Because as you say, if we put it and it's law, whether it's Teresa, whether it's Ndu, whoever it is, it's law. And that's how they'll be treated in future. So we will pursue that. Yeah.
Let's do something we hardly do on the show. Actually, I think we've never had this on the show. Listen, today as we speak, there are over 100 children who are in prison. They are not prisoners. They are there accompanying their mothers. Okay? And like you're saying, there's nothing in law that says you shall give them diapers, you shall give them special diet, you shall give them this and the other provisions. So your organization then, I'm sure, is involved in trying to support these children who are in prison.
Yes.
So how do you raise your funds? How do you raise this kind of support?
We fundraise locally and internationally. We speak to faith-based organizations, to corporate bodies, individuals, whoever can support in whichever little way, to buy a diaper, to buy flour that we can take into prisons, porridge flour, to buy, the essentials for a child, their panties, children clothes, whatever a child needs. Whoever can donate that, whether in cash or in kind, can drop at our offices, in Westlands at School Lane, number 31, or we've got a pay bill number 543-268, and on that pay bill number, send some donation, and accounts say it's for the children. We then put the donations together and distribute them across the women prisons, Kajiado, Kapenguria, Narok, Busia, Bundanyi, wherever. And they reach these children. And Kenya prisons have an open door policy. They have an open door policy, and they accept and they say, yes, for the sake of these children, we will accept these things so that the children have a good beginning.
So people can donate directly to your organization.
Yes.
And that's coming to your office in Westlands.
Yeah.
Or what's our pay bill number again?
543-268.
543-268.
Yes.
But also at the same time, you've said, if people just went directly to a women's prison and say, I've got children's clothes here and I'd like to donate to the children who are here, the prison's authorities are ready to take.
Yes, they do. They have an open door policy, and they accept the donations on behalf of the children.
What are the most pressing needs currently?
It's the panties, the diapers, for the children, definitely the food. So I'll talk about the porridge flour, green gram flour, fruits, eggs. Those are the basic needs. Vaseline, soap for bathing that child. Those are some of the most pressing needs for these children. Yeah. Yeah, and clothes. You know, a mother has come into prison pregnant. She definitely was not coming to the maternity ward.
Yep.
She needs something to cover her child with, and the clothes. And it's not like she's working and earning and there are some shops nearby to buy these things. No, you know, unless you come and bring them, she has nothing to fold her child for her child in. You know, some warm clothing for this child. Not their crime, yet their sentence.
What has been the response so far locally? Good, bad, medium, growing, declining?
Growing, 1. 2, medium. And I say medium because I know we could do better. But we're so grateful because people are committed and are doing something.
Would you say that, okay, the question is, do you have people who donate and support your program from outside the country?
Many.
Many.
Actually, 3/4 of how we survive as an organization is the support we get from the US and the UK.
It can get better.
Yep.
It can get better, even as we say this. But I think there's the two different worlds here that we are looking at in order to come together to make the situation better. That we know that a criminal justice system exists by necessity in this country because there will be crimes. There will also be unfair imprisonments, unjust imprisonments. And then there will be these children who suffer a sentence even though the crime was not their own. It can get better, but then even as you say this, the unrelenting voice then also continues to need to be there. From when you started until now, are you seeing a greater push? And I go especially by the state to have the situation improve, or at least to say that those who then make the law will make sure that it is put in to ensure that these ugly situations don't continue.
Yes, and we saw that a lot last year when the president, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta himself, mandated that this Kenya Prisons childcare policy framework be effected, immediately, as quickly as possible. So it's at that level now. And for that, we're very grateful that the leader, the leader of this country, His Excellency the President, Uhuru Kenyatta, has this on his radar and has directed. And if the authority is coming from that level, then we have every faith and belief that it's trickling down. And indeed, we are seeing the impact and the changes that are happening. And for that, we're grateful.
Thank you. So let's take a break from KTN Home. We've been having this conversation on KTN Home since the top of the hour, but it continues on SpiceFM around the country. And also, we are live streaming the show. You can watch it on YouTube, SpiceFM KE, or on Facebook. Our page is SpiceFM KE. Good morning. So, Teresa, as we conclude the conversation, we've heard what you're saying. I mean, you're engaging with various stakeholders to raise this conversation. There's also the greater engagement that needs to happen with the community because of the issue that you started with on reintegration. As we conclude, just tell us what you're doing about that.
Okay. Reintegration. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Reintegration has been the biggest gap in the system this far because there has been no structure. And I say that, from the point of arrest, journey with me, you're arrested by a system, the police service. They hand you over to the prosecution office of the ODPP. They hand you over to the judiciary. You're tried. They hand you over to the prison service. Okay. After the prison service are done with you, who do they hand you over to?
They release you.
They release you to who? So you're at the gate. You've been released to a society that does not know what to do with ex-convicts, that fears and wants nothing to do with you because you'll come having been trained how to steal, how to spike people, and all manner of things, and they know how desperate you are, so no one wants anything to do with you.
And I think let's have that conversation when we invite you again, which this time focuses on we as a people. How do we treat people who have come out of prison?
Amazing.
Because it's an important conversation on Justice Thursday. Yeah. Teresa, thank you very much for joining us. Teresa Njoroge is the founder of Clean Start Kenya. We have been having a conversation about babies behind bars. The next time she's here, we'll talk about women behind bars and when they come out, how we treat them as a society. Keep it right here for more conversations. This is the Situation Room. A very good morning. It's 9 o'clock.
The SpiceFM Newswire is brought to you by InDriver. Choose your preferred driver, mode of transport, and negotiate your fare to your destination for a safe, comfortable, and affordable trip only with InDriver.
This is Newswire. Dennis Aseto. Azimio la Umoja movement takes its campaigns to
the latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
Strengthen the tax collection system in the Amboseli game reserve for the benefit of the residents. Leaders who support his ambitions continued criticizing the Kenya Kwanza alliance, saying that Raila is best suited to run the affairs of the country as his opponents cannot be trusted. Meanwhile, Kenya Kwanza alliance will today be in Kajiado County, a day after campaigning in Naivasha, Nakuru County. They'll be seeking to outmaneuver their opponents who were there yesterday. The strike by health workers in Kwale County enters its second day today, despite Governor Salim Vura threatening to send them honking. The strike by the health workers want their issues addressed, ranging from delayed promotions to delayed remission of their benefits for over 2 years. Patients arriving at various health facilities in the county have been forced to go back home or seek for treatment elsewhere. The National Assembly Speaker Justin Muthui has approved the expulsion of 6 Jubilee MPs from key parliamentary committees. In his communication, Muthui noted that he was satisfied that due process was followed in discharging members. The 6 legislators allied to the Deputy President's United Democratic Alliance Party are like Keeper Women Representative Kate Waruguru, who served in the Departmental Committee on Livestock, William Kipkembo Information, Kato Olemitito Defense, Jafeth Karekembiuki Environment, David Gikaria Energy, and Ali Wario, who has been discharged from the Select Committee on Regional Integration. As is the requirement, the Speaker said the MPs have been fully notified of the intended ejection by the majority party leader. And the ruling Jubilee Party suffered another blow in the National Assembly. This is after legislators allied to the Deputy President William Ruto ganged up to shoot down a procedural motion that sought to reduce the publication period for the Elections Amendment Bill 2022 from 14 to 5 days. 62 members voted against the motion that was moved by the Leader of Majority Amos Kimunya, with only 43 supporting it. Among the key proposals in the 23 clause bill is to cap the time limit for lodging an electoral dispute with the Commission to 48 hours. It further seeks to provide complementary mechanisms for voter identification and transmission of external results. As Kenya heads to elections in August, political parties have been urged to ensure they meet the gender quota so as to increase women representation in elected positions. Kenya has lagged behind on the gender quota, with women remaining largely unrepresented for years, despite calls from various players and stakeholders to have a balance. President Uhuru Kenyatta ignored advice from former Chief Justice David Maraga to disband Parliament, which he said remains illegally constituted for failing to meet the two-thirds gender rule as outlined in the Constitution, and to ensure that the two-thirds gender rule is met in the next Parliament that will be constituted after the August election. The Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission is piling pressure on political parties to ensure the nomination lists are gender-sensitive, failure to which they will not be approved. Still in the National Assembly, and it will review a technical report on the Nairobi Expressway in a bid to address concerns that the toll road exposes Parliament to security threats. National Assembly Speaker Justin Muthui ordered the House Security Committee to table a technical report within 3 weeks after members raised concerns that the road elevated above the existing Uhuru Highway provides a vantage point from where criminals could stage an attack on Parliament. Kitutu Masaba MP Shadrach Muse said that Parliament is a key national institution that requires strategic security communication. The government has released 6 billion shillings to cover 1.2 million households in its commitment to ensure that all Kenyans can access quality Medicare as provided for in the Big Four agenda and in line with Vision 2030. To this end, President Uhuru Kenyatta will launch a universal healthcare upskill program with the aim to push universal healthcare registration to the next level and to ensure that most vulnerable are cushioned. Government spokesperson, retired Colonel Cyrus Aguna, said the program does provide an opportunity for members of the society to register, adding that health is an aspect of development. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Alceto. Good morning.
The SpiceFM Newswire is brought to you by InDriver. Download the InDriver app from the App Store or Google Play Store to enjoy a safe, comfortable, and affordable ride around Nairobi.
We're still in traffic hour. Should come to an end in not too long from now. Certain parts of the city with still traffic this morning. A little bit on the Thika Superhighway getting into the city should be dissipating in a short while now. It was looking a little bit better on Raila Odinga Way and then out towards Ngong Road. Mombasa Road, we're still seeing that Imara stretch with some in and outbound traffic. Probably continue until a few minutes after 10 o'clock and then should be all right. Okay, let's keep an eye on things. Let's look at when traffic hours should be over at about 9:30 or so. And then we'll chat. Do that on SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
7 minutes after 9. Good morning. This is the final hour of the show today. We are still live on Spice FM and online. And CT has the day's proverb.
Amechagua nazi, akapata dafu.
Amechagua nazi, akapata dafu. Picked a naz
and got
a duff.
Yes.
Picked a duff.
Yes. Pick coconut. However, you get something else beyond the coconut. It's what's inside the coconut. Mm-hmm.
There's more to it.
Yes.
All right. So we continue with the conversation this hour, and the conversation is with regards to the IEBC. So they spent some money and they went into a robust exercise at the end of last year, October, November, where they began what they call an enhanced continuous voter registration exercise, seeking to enlist 6 million new voters. And where did they pick the figure of 6 million from? They picked it from the fact that some 6 million people have newly acquired IDs, and those 6 million people have not registered as voters. So that first exercise over an entire month netted 1.5 million voters. They said, you know what, let's pick the lessons, we'll be back. Big lesson number one, we're told by commissioners, was people actually have applied for IDs and not many people have gone to collect their IDs. Number two, There's voter apathy. So people are like, okay, yeah, you're telling me about voting. Yeah, but what's the point of voting? What for? So they said, we got to pick those lessons and improve and then come with the second round of the enhanced continuous voter registration exercise. Kicked off on the 7th of January, comes to an end on the 6th of February. Target, 4.5 million voters. So far from the figures that we've seen from the IEBC, they're far from hitting that target. Even with the lessons learned, far from hitting that target.
That if they had learned no lessons, they would have been even far further. Yes.
They learned the lessons. The question is, did they actually apply those lessons?
And if they did,
to what degree and to what success? Okay? So, what next? Now that they are not going to hit this target, so what next? And to have this conversation with us is the chairperson of the Elections Observer Group, ELOG, and her name is Anne Ireri. Anne, good morning.
Good morning, Eric.
Good to have you in the Situation Room.
Thank you for having me.
You're a friend of ours, so we're not going to hit up the seats. We will just, you're not the person who we are interrogating here. You're not the IEBC.
No.
Neither are you the parliamentary committee in charge of these matters. Neither are you the National Treasury. So you are a friend. You're just like us. But because you sit in the Election Observation Group,
yes,
you'll have some insights to share. So far, according to the IEBC, how many new voters have been registered?
Thank you very much, Eric, and happy to be here. From the statistics we have seen, of course, are yet to be verified, but we are seeing we are yet to get to the 1 million target already. They were looking at additional 1.5 million voters. I think we are just slightly shy of 500,000. And so this brings out the question, why are we where we are at now? And from where we sit as ELOG, which is an umbrella organization of numerous civil society organizations and faith-based organizations, the answer is not going to be found 7 months to an election. We'll have to do a lot of soul-searching, a lot of backtracking, to see where the rain started beating us. And I think it will involve all Kenyans for us to be able to solve the problems for purposes of future elections.
But we already have some of those answers. Answers were included, IDs applied for, because the registration bureau have said we have people who've applied for IDs.
Yes.
We have produced IDs.
Yes.
They are lying in our offices,
Yes.
at Huduma Center, at chief's offices, haven't been collected. That's answer number one, because this is the only thing that you need to register as a voter.
Yes.
So if people haven't collected IDs, we know there's a problem. This is a problem.
There's a problem, Eric, and the bigger question would be, why would I, as an 18-year-old Kenyan, find no interest in going to collect for national identity cards
that you applied for?
Exactly. So that's where we start. Where is that? In terms of them appreciating, and we're not blaming them. That's why we're saying we need to go back to the basics. That do they feel? Do they understand? Do they relate with their civic duty? Do they find it important to vote? I've been talking to young people. We try and reach out to them. We have them in our families, and you can genuinely tell there's really no interest to participate in matters civic duty. So that's the bigger question that we need to now start looking at as Kenyans. Besides other issues, where did the rain start beating us and how do we correct it? Because again, it's systemic. It didn't occur overnight.
Right.
It's a pattern that perhaps has been building up. And for us to redeem that, we then have to start undoing a lot of what has already gone into forming the stereotype and the minds that we are seeing.
Even as you're looking at how those stereotypes have been formed, and as you're talking to younger people, I often find also that when there's no interest in something, it's also because there is no knowledge and education of said thing.
Yes.
So because I do not know about this thing, then I'm not even interested in facets of it at all.
Yes.
So, oftentimes CT here advocates for entrenching this knowledge at the very basic level of education.
Yes.
Start to talk about, your civic duty. Because you tell an 18-year-old right now who's already socialized, who's already formed about their civic duty, and they tell you, actually, thank you very much, but my civic duty right now is to focus on the things that interest me. Now, I will not be interested in something I do not know about.
Yes.
Something that you did not involve me in from the very process when I was being socialized.
Exactly.
So could that not be another issue that we're saying, all right, we're not really interested in it because we do not know. And so then civic education must be center place. And does then the IEBC have a responsibility when it then comes to that? Because you can't come in the middle of something, the food is almost finished cooking, and then now you want to introduce a new ingredient. I mean...
Absolutely. We look at it from two perspectives. I think, one, there's a clear need for civic education in this country, but also political education. If you look at, especially now, even beyond the 18-year rules, the average youth, this we are speaking to Kenyans probably 25 to 35. These are post-college or at least tertiary education level. And often I ask them, because that's part of what we do, how many of you even belong to political parties? And they show they have no interest. And by the time you now try to explain to them, okay, look, you see, it's. I think the politics branding in our country has made it necessarily look that it is a bad thing. But if you were to even follow strict rules, as Kenyans, as citizens, the first process we need to be involved in is within our political parties, because strictly speaking, you can only choose a leader within your political party if you're a member of that political party. So there's this certain disinterest, and I think it's because especially the young people, those who at least have had some enlightenment, think it is necessarily bad. Politics has also been branded and scammed to look as if it is necessarily a bad thing. But then for them to come and complain, even away from the civic duty, that look, on the ballot paper, these are the leaders we have, we didn't have a choice. The choice started earlier on if they had participated more. So I think, to answer you, I think there's need for us to engage in civic education, IBC alongside other stakeholders like ourselves, but also to look at the question of political education. Do Kenyans understand the link between politics and their everyday lives? The choice of leaders you have, what influence does it have on your mother or your grandmother or your child? And that necessarily you raising your voice does not mean you're engaging in politics. It's actually holding those in office to account. So I think that's what we need to start looking at. Yeah.
You know, when you talked about getting to the basics, my mind went to something even more fundamental. What is it that sparks people to take an interest in something? Then I also ask myself, what is it that now sparks or gets them to do the complete opposite?
Yes.
If you look at even just the relationships we have.
Yes. I think one you have, I mean, I'm not the total authority on psychology or so, but I think you have to feel
on
that
these subjects,
link.
nobody really is an authority.
Yes, but I think you have to feel there's that link, that it directly affects us. If you look at young people, I mean, there's a joke that even in terms of civic education, and I think it's real, a lot of young people are saying, okay, at the end of the day, if you're going to train us on civic education, is there a module? Can we watch it on Netflix and catch up with it? And you can see when it comes to matters, entertainment, matters that we've got to understand the Kenyan youth. And the Kenyan youth right now is really feeling disenfranchised. We dropped the ball on them along the way. And I'll tell you some of the things that we see, because they are all related, and that's why we need to look at the bigger picture. I serve as ILOG's chair, but I'm also the executive director at FIDA. So one of the things that would concern me is when we look at even the levels of interpersonal relations between the youth, those relationships are dysfunctional. So if I'm to start talking to a young person about voting, her immediate or his immediate challenges are even just relational. So how do we get to those matters? So as a country, we must own, especially this young generation, because they are our generation. Let's find a way of speaking to them. Let's still not tire. And that's why I keep on saying we can't tire. Let's look for the role models that would aspire. Let's look at ways of them seeing the link between, yes, they are feeling jobless, they are feeling hopeless. Do they realize it's about the level of leadership they have? And they should be able to not be swayed by the theatrics they get to see 6 years or a year before elections, but to really be able to question, have the town hall sessions, the open sessions where they can be able to relate and see if I'm a boda rider and every day I lose a friend on the road, who has to answer for that? Because they're losing their friends on the road through accidents. So that's why we'll have to have that conversation as a society. Everyone needs to own part of it, and for us to see how do we correct, because it's systemic, and for us to undo it, it's going to take a long time, but it's not impossible.
Take this view. You talk about the youth being dysfunctional. Where do they learn this from? Because it's learned behavior. It's not in school. School, they get along with their mates and so forth.
Mm.
As you were talking, the thing that came to my mind is how it is relationships break down.
Mm-hmm.
If it's in a marriage, how it breaks down to the point where people separate and eventually divorce.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take a day.
Mm.
And then if you juxtapose the process that people take in order to get married.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the disconnect, if you look at it,
Mm-hmm.
and you look at the youth seem divorced from all these things that we're talking about.
Mm.
And we talk about talking to them, whereas I think what we ought to be doing is focusing on how we can set better examples
Mm-hmm.
that somebody can emulate. Here you are a parent telling your child that corruption is a bad thing, and the child sees you bribing a policeman.
Mm.
So what happens? The child learns that when a policeman stops, he says, "Daddy or Mommy, do you have money to give the policeman?" They've
The child
internalized
learns
this.
that, or also learns that when they see someone in authority telling them something, that they best not listen to that individual because, their example shows something totally different.
Yes, then they grow up, there's media, they can read, they can listen to news, and you're told, oh, these are the leaders who are doing this and this and the other. And they realize, but wait a moment, this person I hear. Our system, our country is replete with the most negative possible results that you could think of when you're talking about setting good examples of being role models, as we like calling it.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, we will talk about it, but we hardly see it being practiced.
Mm.
So I don't know. I don't think it really matters how deep we look into this thing. This apathy is part and parcel of the growth process of these young people.
Mm.
And it's not going to vanish tomorrow or the day after or next year. The only way it can change, in my view, is a situation where the very things that we hear being said, they actually see being done.
Mm. That is one. And two, I think as you've said, yes, there is a sense that we don't have good role models, but surprisingly, we do have good role models.
Really?
The question is, who is it that is given the prominence as a role model? Because I think we have now left the role models to largely the political class, which has its own faults, and there are good politicians, but even those who are there, who are good, who are few, do we get to highlight them? Secondly, away from the political class, because you see, it's all tied up, and as you say, the question will take quite a while, but on matters corruption, how do we glorify wrongdoing in this country, and how do we then uplift those who are trying to do the right thing? So I feel, and we do have role models in Kenya, it's a question of letting the young people and the value system, us being serious about it, and then having them get more involved in public service, because now public service is at times equated to getting resources quickly. They're the ones we see. So what does that do in terms of even those who might have a genuine career interest in public service? So we have got to then see how do we leverage on this. But right now, if we now look at the numbers, as Eric asked, of course, it's alarming. It's late in the day. What we now need to see is going forward, we have lessons to learn. 2027 will not be far. How do we then start being very deliberate and intentional about correcting this area, especially of voter apathy among the youth, so that come 2027, you're not speaking about the same thing? Because remember this, if an 18-year-old in 2027 will be 23, do we want them to carry the same mindset, or what do we then try to work on that when they're 23-year-olds, they at least have a different mind shift?
We're talking about children who were born from the year 2000.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
What is it that you would say would be different with those children from the children who were born in the previous years, in the 90s and the 80s and the 70s? I mean, if we just look at it, just casual observation, you actually see that they have greater access to information now. You see that because of the greater access to various points of information, they know who is responsible for what. They are the ones who raise these issues in school right now. They are the ones who are raising issues that they have in colleges and universities. So they know how to connect between issue, source, and route to solution. In the previous generations, it was the same. there was a connection between, yes, we are university, we demand this and we have a right. Or we are in school, we demand this and we have a right. The difference is that I think the previous generations were not as empowered as the current generation. So even if they had all these thoughts, they would be like, I don't have a role to play in seeking a solution. With that then having been said, then the issue of saying that this generation has voter apathy because there's no connection between their issues and their choice of leader is sort of not entirely true. Because there's that knowledge. And we see it being applied in various other sectors of their lives. And also remember that we have 17 million registered voters. More than half of them registered as youth. So if we've been having all these youth registering before, what is it that would making this particular time to have a difference? Not necessarily apathy.
It's not so much apathy, but I also want to indicate, and yes, you've rightfully said, Eric, that the youth have more access to information. But, access to information does not necessarily mean you're empowered. It's a question of, have you understood, what do you need to do with that information? Yes, at the click of a button, they have everything they need to look at. But they're the same people who might not even understand how to consume and package this information. So I think the assumption we made was that because, yes, they have access to information, that's sufficient. They still need to be able to break down that information to them and for them to understand. That's why I'm saying making the link. A lot of even 18, 20-year-olds, just ask them, what do you think of the Kenyan Constitution? They will tell you, I really don't think much. But you've not taken time to actually break down to them that same constitution, from the time you're a child, has guaranteed your rights, your basic fundamental rights, for example, to where you are right now. So that's why we say it has to be continuous, and we must mainstream the element of civic education, political education, and young people getting interested in their own matters effectively. If you look at the register, I just want to point an interesting thing. As ILOG, we've been doing the analysis of both ECVR 1 and 2. And one of the things that's very interesting that no one wants to highlight is that a lot of what's happening at the registration centers is not so much new voters, but people are changing the voters.
Yeah.
Their voting stations, and historically we know why that is done. So you see, that's part of now what we need to be able to let Kenyans understand, and we empathize. One, if you listen to Kenyans, they'll tell you right now I have a choice either to go to the market to sell my wares, to go fishing, or I sit down at a line in a school somewhere and register my details to vote. What they now need to see is that, yes, you'll make the choice to miss out on registration or changing to where you'd want to be, perhaps over the years you've moved, to you going to earn a living. You don't understand and you don't see the link that whoever will be elected will actually have a direct link with how you earn your livelihood. So again, going back to basics and making politics accessible. Part of the reasons we've said, and that's what we need to keep highlighting, when you have the context of Kenyan politics being mad with violence, being mad with all the shouting we are seeing, normal Kenyans or typical Kenyans will say, okay, that's not for me. And who ends up having their day at the end of the day? It's a political class. You have fewer people to hold you to account, fewer people to ask you questions. So we need to also think, and that's our appeal to IBC. As we evolve, we've seen a lot of things have evolved. So we also now need to look at evolving the electoral process in Kenya without compromising the credibility, but making it more accessible that I can vote. In most countries, you travel around the world, people go to vote in the morning, come back to work in the evening.
Yes.
Why is it in Kenya that now elections are it's a catastrophe that we have to now plan our lives around elections? That should not be the case. We have to normalize politics. We have to normalize, we have to go vote in new leaders or vote out old leaders. New leaders come in knowing they're going to be held to account. Old leaders say, thank you, I served you my time, and I go home to do other things. That's what we need to be working towards.
Let me ask this question.
Yes.
At what age should we start sensitizing young people about their politics and the politics of their country?
In my view, as soon as they start going to school. From the minute they hit kindergarten, What we need to look at is what are we making them consume? Because the basics of, and you've seen it happens in a lot of, look at the countries that are the most patriotic about themselves. Go to their education system.
It's almost doctrine.
Exactly. So we always say, where did we lose our Kenyanism? I remember, I think for most of us who are here, there's a time we used to always say the loyalty pledge. It had its own history, but that level of being aware of who you are as a Kenyan must start from being young. Ideals and integrity values like honesty, being able to question. There's nothing wrong with questioning because Kenyans have also been socialized that it's wrong to question. So that must start
it's
as
wrong
soon.
to question authority.
Authority, exactly. So it must start as soon as children start learning to write, to read, and to know who they are as early as a basic education.
I started off. Are we going to a break?
Let's take the break.
Let's take the break.
And then you can start off. Yeah? Sindio?
Perfect.
Okay. It's 8:30. 9. Kenya's biggest conversation takes a break. Anne Ireri, the chairperson of ELOG, the Elections Observation Group, is with us in the studio. We are asking ourselves, so with just a few days, 3 days, to the conclusion of the second enhanced continuous voter registration exercise by the IEBC, which was targeting 4.5 million new voters, and they are way off target. So what next? What happens next? What lessons are we picking from this, and how do we apply those lessons going into the future? Let's look at the weather and traffic. We'll be back shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
No, this wheelbarrow, how can you give people wheelbarrow? His party symbol is an umbrella. Is he distributing umbrellas in Makueni?
Have you been told if we don't lock between 10 to 4, this is what we're saving?
You try and call them, the same person who was in your house every day, because they know you are influential and you will give them votes. Call them after 1 month and see if they'll pick up their phone.
Don't tell your member of parliament that you want him to come and build a school, you want him to come and do a hospital. That is not the work of the member. Now that we have devolution in this country, this resources should go to those devolved units.
You have to have strong, independent institutions. And you have to have police who has the right to take the biggest town in the country and question, why did you do this and that, and send them to court if necessary.
Joel Nkericho, good morning.
Salama sana Eric, habari ya asubuhi.
Salama kabisa. Mbunge wako ni nani?
Anaitwa Seriousness Martin, hapa ni Ainamoi.
Seriousness Martin, Ainamoi.
Yes. Sasa ile juma nampambia yeye nini? Amalize aende. Asante sana.
That's it.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Cloudy conditions in Nairobi is what we're looking at today. Through Thursday, we will see highs of 25 and lows of 15. It's sunny in Nakuru at 20, highs of 26 and lows of 15, while in Nyeri, 19 degrees and partly sunny, highs of 26 and lows of 13. The clouds are still hanging in Eldoret, 18 degrees, highs of 24 and lows of 12. It's sunny this morning in Mombasa at 30. We'll see highs of 31 and lows of 25. While in Malindi, 28 degrees and mostly sunny, highs of 31 and lows of 26. Kisumu is sunny at 24, highs of 27 and lows of 19. While in Kakamega at 24, it's partly sunny with highs of 28. We'll see lows of 16. Kampala is partly cloudy at 23, highs of 28 and lows of 19. While in Dar es Salaam, it continues to rain at 28, highs of 32 and lows of 26. It's sunny in Johannesburg at 22, highs of 28 and lows of 17, while in Lagos still remains hazy at 22, highs of 33 and lows of 21. It's also a rainy morning in Kinshasa at 24, highs of 29 and lows of 23. All right, in Beijing, sunny conditions going into evening Thursday, 3 degrees, sunny, highs of 3 and lows of -7, 8 degrees and cloudy. In Paris, 10 degrees will be the high today, 12 will be the high in London, where it's currently cloudy at 9, and there's still dense fog in New York coming into early Thursday. It's cloudy at 6, highs of 8 and lows of 1.
Chilled Spice.
All right, slowly creeping to the end of traffic hour. What we're looking at is a little bit of traffic in certain parts. Jogger Road started early and still continues. And we're looking at looking a little bit better on Gong Road this morning. The southern bypass at that nook still has a bit of an issue. Don't forget, it's because of the diversion that we saw on Mombasa Road. Langata Road, just a little bit here and there. But Uhuru Highway, a little bit of traffic as you're getting into the city. It's looking a little bit better on Langata Road as well. Thika Superhighway almost done. Just at the Pangani Underpass is where you will see some traffic today. Apart from that, I think you can get through without too much of a headache. Let's talk, however, through the day on SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text on 40127.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
You know, what we're talking about is happening in our country. And if you were to follow the thinking trajectory of how things happen in this country, I would stop looking at the usual culprits: apathy, information, education, edification, sensitization. There is so much happening around this particular election. Laws are being changed as we watch. And the question is, why were those laws not changed 2 years ago? I mean, we knew we were going to have an election in 2022. And then there is this perennial issue of complications with something as simple as doing what? Changing the point at which you want to vote. When this matter first came up, we heard people saying, surely, is it beyond IEBC to have explained, for instance, that if you want to change, you need to have A, B, C, D, or get this and this and the other? Why must we hear from people who have actually gone to have this service provided to them, telling us this? Why? We ought to have known this. We wouldn't have been querying it if we had done this. Then IBC comes and tells us that they have insufficient funding. Okay, everybody has insufficient funding, so that one we understand. All arms of government, all of independent bodies within government, they always have insufficient funds. That one we get. Unfortunately, conspiracy theory has to rear its head here. You know, if it has webbed feet, it quacks and is given to short flights.
Feathers.
Yes. It has feathers, has a beak. It's not a platypus, because platypus also has a beak, but it's in water. It's a duck. Our political system is incapable of anything, literally. And voter suppression is not out of the question. Are you telling me that when we have supplementary budgets where we are dishing money for all sorts of things, something as important as an election, they couldn't have found money? In the same way they took money from water, agriculture, this, the other. They couldn't have taken money from some other place to give to this all-important issue of ensuring that this particular election is given the attention it deserves. They could have, but they didn't. Why?
That's true. Because if you look at just recent history, in 2010, ahead of the referendum, law was enacted that said, let's change our election register. From manual register, let's have an electronic biometric register. Money was put into that exercise, and a lot of awareness was created so that we enrolled as many voters as possible. Right? And that's when we went to over 10 million voters registered.
Yes.
Because everybody had to register afresh. It doesn't matter whether it was Mwai Kibaki, who has been voting since 1963.
Everyone.
Everybody had to register afresh. We got all those many people to register as voters. Subsequently, we are not seeing as much effort. This time, as we talk about all these things, and that's, I agree with what you're saying, CT, because I am still of the opinion that it's not necessarily that the young voter is apathetic or any different from how I was when I was young. You ask the question today, you ask a young person, what do you think about the Constitution? The difference is that this person at least knows there's a constitution. They'll tell you one or two things about the constitution. Ask me when I was 18. I knew there's a constitution, but it's something I'd never interacted with.
None.
Yeah. This time, there is all this conversation about, the law being changed. There's a BBI that's seeking to amend the constitution. So at least there's a conversation about the constitution that's taking place.
But even more interestingly, you listen to what happens in our courts. There's always some conversation about it.
Yes.
And why? Because that new constitution has given
opened
power to the judicial system.
Yeah.
So now people can do things that ordinarily we couldn't. And there's clarity even on our laws on so many issues.
Yeah. So today's youth, this target,
Yes.
are more aware. Are more aware about the constitution. They're more aware about voting. They're more aware about, and they can see the leaders. They have more leaders to interact with. They're seeing an MCA here, governor there, president there, deputy president there, an opposition leader there who's a deputy president. All this, they can see. There's more awareness. But the question comes in, what else beyond the awareness? Is there convenience in registering as a voter? I don't know today.
Is the environment conducive then, or have things been made accessible for them to then take this knowledge and transfer it to action? That because I know all of this, and then I must be included or participate in the decision-making process. So then have the avenues been created? Is it easier? Is it feasible for me to then take the next step? Because you're asking, I have this information, then what am I doing with it? So is the environment then conducive for me to then make the next decision? So then if you bring in, could be conspiratorial, could you bring in the issue of, is there voter suppression taking place? Then you have to ask the question, is something rotten in the land of Denmark? Is there something going on that would say, this large group of people, how would it hurt me if they actually came and made a decision about the politics of the day?
What's interesting is, one, as a country, it's not really uncharted waters. We have been here. If you look very clearly at reports such as the 2007 Kriegler report, he was very deliberate, Justice Kriegler, to bring out a report that showed systemic steps, inadvertent issues that came out, but eventually led us to the mess we are at. So we have something to bounce off from. Secondly, if it's an issue of turnout and convenience, then I would ask, and that's what any ordinary Kenyan might be curious, if the youth are not turning out to vote, to register, where are we seeing mammoth crowds, or at least crowds in rallies?
Of which youth make part of. Yes,
exactly. So what has made them turn out then and they're not turning out to vote? You see the pattern? And then thirdly, which is very important, why we need to see, and you see that's the link, and I do agree, the ball has been dropped somewhere in terms of letting Kenyans understand. You might have 20% of people who turn out to register. That means potentially, if you look at the requirements of the Constitution on who makes it to be a president, you might have a president who's voted by a very small population of the country. Validly so, a small population. What does that mean for our country? What does that mean for that presidency and for that leadership? And so we need to look at everything. And as Siti has said, we also cannot play naive. One, it's a very unique election. It's the first time in an election, I think, and I stand corrected, 7 months to an election, none of the front runners has named who their running mate is. That has dynamics. We are seeing dynamics of coalitions. Look at some of the amendments being proposed as of today. They're attempting to take us back to the same place we said, no, let's go back. Let's move from that. But what is critical, and we pointed that as ILOG, is that all these last-minute amendments, we predicted that. And we appeared severally before the JLAC committees at Senate and at National Assembly. Because, of course, there's mischief. As you rightly pointed out, elections it's not something that catches us by surprise. Exactly. We were filling in election commissioners only, I think, a few months ago. To date, I'm sure very many Kenyans don't know who they are. So what we need to look at, and that's why as ILOG we are asking, for us to have fair, credible, and free elections, tough decisions have to be made now. It is already late in the day, and so now the ball and everything points at IBC. With this register you'll have, even if you'll have 20 or 30%, your duty and your responsibility is to now safeguard the integrity of that register, because short of it now it becomes a mess. Yes, we've lost out on numbers, but you can still encourage the youth to come out. Why? The law does not state that beyond 6th of February you can never register. You can still register. You can go to constituency offices and register. So that's the information. For example, as ILOG, we expect to see the IBC to be very clear to Kenyans. Yes, ECVR.
Do you see it? Do you hear of it?
We are here to push them to do that. And you can rest assured ILOG will do that. That as they release their report on 6th of February, we are going to release ours. And one of our key findings is that there must be deliberate messaging to Kenyans that beyond 6th of February, you can still register. There are genuine Kenyans who perhaps are in hospital, whose circumstances may have forced them or made them unable to register. Does it mean that you cannot register beyond? No, you can. So the messaging has to be that even from 7th of February, if you have not registered as a voter, you can still walk into any IBC constituency office. Where are those offices? We expect to see clear identification, demarcation, and information to Kenyans as to where they can go so that they are able to register. That's one of the things we need to see. Secondly, we know there are other factors that have caused Kenyans not to register, and we know the pattern in Kenya. Look at insecurity. We always ask, okay, there's a time we were very quiet. Now all of a sudden we've started seeing a lot of insecurity. We know it's not coincidental. It's deliberate. It is planned. There are reports on that. So the Ministry of Interior, the National Police Service must be able to come out and guarantee Kenyans in areas where we know violence is used as a trigger to hinder Kenyans from voting or from registering, to take that seriously. And thirdly, for those who have been registered, IBC needs to be very clear and show us as Kenyans, as they start the audit, that yes, we are among the 40% who are registered or 30%, but your vote is secure, that you can still go and vote. So that's where now the buck and now stops with IBC. They have to come out and vote. But meanwhile, as Kenyans, and as we've said, you don't register and sit back. People are going around the country. People asking for votes. Listen to everyone, regardless of who they are, devoid of intimidation, devoid of violence. At the end of the day, it's you to decide. It's so funny why you'd wake up one morning to go register or to go queue and vote for people to tell you who to vote for. I mean, it's like earning money and then people tell you how to spend it. It's for you to decide. That's your right. So Kenyans also have to now get involved. We have 7 months to the election. Give everyone a fair chance as they come, and that's a political education we are speaking about, because the more we have stronger leaders coming out of the 2022 elections, the more we'll have more serious elections in 2027. We'll not have the kind of situation we're having right now, because you have a political class that is not serious about the electoral process.
No, they're very serious.
In getting themselves to office.
They are very serious. In fact, just like as you were explaining all these things, I was writing down my notes. And it was dawning on me that actually the political class has been preparing for the 2022 general election since
the last general
election.
And beyond.
They have actually been working towards this and making sure that it shall happen in their own terms.
As I'm saying, they're serious about getting themselves into office, not the electoral process.
The electoral process.
No.
Let me tell you why I mean what I mean by this.
Yes, go ahead.
Look, we have had all these bills pending before Parliament
Yes.
on the electoral process.
Yes.
Political parties, campaign regulations, campaign funding regulations. This one's the Elections Act. It has been there. IEBC. But it was deliberately suppressed.
Yes.
Number one. Number two, we have had an IEBC that only had 3 commissioners for all those years.
And no CEO.
To
date.
Until commissioners were appointed the other day. To date, we have only an acting CEO. Deliberate. We have seen this whole conversation that we're talking about, of IEBC being present to conduct voter education, suppressed. The issue of funding the IEBC to properly facilitate them to conduct this voter registration, suppressed. Civil society. The voice of the civil society has been muzzled, deliberately so, by those who support the civil society. Funding. And this is foreign organizations and countries being told how to engage with the Kenyan civil society.
Yes. In other words, how to or not fund them.
Yes. memoranda coming from the Foreign Affairs Ministry to various embassies and saying, if you want to engage in any support of
certain
activities about the election, it must come through us
first.
the ministry, before it goes to the IEBC. You shall not fund IEBC directly. You shall fund IEBC through us.
And this is the Ministry
of Interior also talking about the same thing. So the voice of the civil society has been killed.
It's being muffled.
The
completely.
presence of the civil society in the grassroots to talk about all these things, sensitization, awareness, and questioning the process has also been missing. And that's why I say, Anne, they have deliberately been acting towards the 2022 general election.
And look at
we just are seeing
the
opening our eyes
deliberation.
now.
No, the deliberation, them being deliberate, I agree. That means that my context was them not being serious about a credible electoral process. Let me qualify it. Secondly, even on that area, and I come from the non-state actors, the civil society. They have tried, but we have stood our ground. What we need Kenyans to understand, and that's why we keep, I can tell you, even as we speak, even on behalf of colleagues, people have been on the ground. People have been able to sacrifice. At times we don't have much resources. We say, okay, let's use a church. Let's speak to Kenyans. But the larger issue, and that's why it's a collective problem, is that even from where we sit, there is a lack of interest in Kenyans in the political system. Because they feel let down, they feel hopeless. When we had COVID, we had children home for almost 2 years. We've had loss of livelihoods. This money, if you asked a lot of Kenyans, would tell you it would have gone to some stimulus package. Now, all of a sudden, there's a lot of money. We can see the level and the opulence that the campaigns are taking. So that's why Kenyans now, at the end of the day, why we say, yes, they are hopeless and they feel let down, but we cannot afford to let them feel hopeless, is, as you say, that's also part of the plan. That Kenyans lose interest in politics. You have a very small clout of sycophants who always show up to vote for certain people, and that will not help this country. We have got to get Kenyans out again.
We are actually talking to cross purposes at some point. Why I'm saying this is what you're saying is absolutely true. But it falls more in the category of the consequence of certain things. Apathy being a product. Kenyans seem to have preferred the option of, let me see what I can do with my life. Since I cannot see these people who are supposed to have been looking after it, doing a good job of it, whether they are there or not, it appears I don't really need them. Now, I am now describing the process. And when Eric says it's deliberate, I call it's deliberate voter suppression. Because it's clever, it's insidious, and it has moved stealthily, but it is also extremely effective.
It is. And now we have COVID-19 to even compound it more. We don't know what will happen with COVID-19 according to those who are behind it then. And that's why the more reason and our appeal, if I may say that, even as organizations working on the ground, is this situation, as you have rightfully painted it, needs to disturb Kenyans. Because it is not normal. It's being forced on us to normalize it. It is not. And sadly, we know the pattern of these deliberate actions, how they end up. So Kenyans have to get uncomfortable. Kenyans need to see this is not normal, this is not the status quo, and we must demand more. It's not too late in the day, whether it's through the media, and we appreciate such discussions, but even in terms of just giving Kenyans the option to access information. Sadly, again, we go back to the political class that has been very carefully organizing themselves. They are now in a lot of spaces. Which were the major spaces where Kenyans would access information? The media, the religious organizations. Kenyans go there and
you don't have to whisper it. Just say
yes,
it loudly.
That
the
is
media,
one. The media,
religious organizations.
Exactly. I, as a Kenyan who's going for spiritual nourishment, I'm going there to want to have time with
your creator.
Exactly. Only to find the same people I left out inside talking. That is not fair. And that's part of what we are seeing. So we have got to be very deliberate and make noise. You see, sadly, as you say, at some point, Kenyans. Let me give an example.
We need leadership. Previously, we'd have the opposition.
Yes.
Opposition politicians doing this. And I know the civil society then also gets a space.
Yes.
But we don't have opposition.
Let me tell you. I'll give my personal example. And I vent you'll use a platform you have. I'll use my platform at ELOG, at FIDA, where I can. And we do that every day. I can assure you, a lot of the staff in these organizations, we are not sleeping because it's always one crisis to another.
Yeah.
But if Kenyans found things that are not abnormal and were able to come out and actually call them out, then we'd have peace. Look at this. We have had cases of young people dying. We are having disappearances, for example, in our country, that are heartbreaking. We've sat down with so many of those families. To imagine the loss of a loved one is already so traumatic, and in the manner in which they die. But at the end of the day, one political incident happens, and there's so much hullabaloo, like, oh, leaders actually exist. Where were they? To even speak and condemn that kind of action. And so the baton now goes to the Kenyans. These are the same leaders you voted into office to be able to carry out this mandate on your behalf, to ask questions on their behalf. You cannot allow them to just come. They say they are just panging you. You should be able to ask questions. And that's why we are saying it's not a civic education. It's a political education. That Kenyans see a direct link with the hopelessness they have with the kind of leadership we serve. And leadership is not just presidency. We now have 6 levels of leadership. And beyond that, we have so many other people. If you have a hospital, right now they keep on saying there's a crisis of vaccines. They're actually going bad because vaccines have a shelf life. What are we doing at the local level to ensure that everyone has access to a COVID-19 vaccine? People have now forgotten about that. So Kenyans need that political education reorientation, that whatever you complain about, whether it's the PSV that is being driven badly, you have a choice, you have a role to play. Don't wait for that accident to happen. Then you say, we kept on telling the driver, why is he speeding? And in countries where that progression has been made, that level of empowerment to citizens and them owning the space, and it is not going to be given to you. You have got to claim that space to question.
Irene, you are absolutely right. And you're right in that countries have gotten to the point where the people's voice is actually important and politicians know.
Yes.
But part of the reason why that happened was people who were elected understood this also. So they pursued programs that would ensure that the lives of the people they represented got better and better. You tell me what a poor Kenyan whose main concern is how they're going to eat today. And it's a concern because it's not a guarantee.
Yes.
What space do they have in terms of energy or of thought to be able to agitate? Tell me. Just, okay? Perhaps utter desperation where you realize, something. There's nothing, there's no hope behind this. But in this country, there's always some hope. That's what these rallies do. Whether it's realized, you'd say it isn't. And I'd say it is. Because all you require is a few examples from the people you know to say, I got this. That's an example. So hope is kept alive. But as to the understanding of what your rights really are and how you can encapsulate them so that you can see them for what they are, even if people understand them, in this country, people don't give it too much thought because we focus on how we are just going to survive. If I've gotten it wrong, folks, you need to correct me here. But that seems to be the way Kenyans function. And if there's resistance and there seems to be a problem, you don't confront it, you go around it.
Well, absolutely, because you have unfortunately, because of the spaces that we are operating in right now, there's so many competing interests, and that could be as a result of previously failed leadership, previously failed progressions, and we're talking about things like development and, the putting up of infrastructure, et cetera. Failed. So because of that, the interests are competing. So when you come and ask somebody to pay attention to something else that does not directly relate to their survival for the day, it's a tall order you're asking to fulfill.
It becomes a tall order, and I agree. Our issues at grassroots are bread and butter issues. But what we need to let the Kenyans know is to ask, I'll go back to the questioning and community mobilization. Why am I starving as a Kenyan
today
in a country where we are building mega billion infrastructure projects? Someone has got to give me that answer.
Or why can't I access proper health care?
And you all have a role to play in this.
Exactly.
Yes.
And allow people, there could be a valid answer, but I need to have a chance to hear that answer. So we have got, and that's why we say, at the end of the day, if there's anything we must not relent on, is a community mobilization.
We've got all to be
and
active
it is
citizens.
not easy. I'm telling you, I'll give the example when we were doing the Katiba 2010. When we went around, especially educating the women, we didn't sleep. We used to work on the weekends. We used to go to the markets until Mama Mboga knew this Katiba is for me, is for my children, is for my husband, is for my household.
And this is what it contains.
We have got to get that uncomfortable and get out there.
Thank you very much for joining us for this conversation. Come again soon. We continue talking about election observation as we're heading towards the general election. Annie Nyeri is the chairperson of ELOG, the Elections Observation Group. We've been talking about, so what next after IBC failed to meet its target? City, the day's proverb.
Amechagua nazi, akapata dafu. Choices have consequences.
How many?
In this country, deliberately intended consequences.
Thank you very much for tuning in to Kenya's biggest conversation today. Join us again tomorrow morning, Friday. So, people have been watching, and I have 2 computer screens in front of me. Ndu has 1 computer screen in front of her. CT doesn't have a computer screen.
No.
People are saying you need to do a supplementary budget for CT's computer.
No, I'm represented. It's representation. Eric is representing me in the computer department.
Oh, voila.
Yes.
Okay.
Have a lovely day, folks. Enjoy your day. We'll be back tomorrow from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. It's now 10 o'clock.
Spice up your life. The latest news from